Good afternoon. It is February 17th, 4:30 p.m. Welcome to the San Marino Unified School District Board of Education Special Meeting. Here's your board president, Namjack.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are here on February 17th in person in the boardroom. You can also join us via Zoom. At the meetings of the Board of Education are open to members of the public unless publicly noticed as confidential closed session is allowed by law. Members of the public may address the board as outlined in the public comment section of the agenda. The audio of all meetings is recorded and the member of the public may be held liable for any slanders or otherwise defamatory statements. In consideration of the board and members of the audience, please turn off, silence your cell phones while in the boardroom, and I would ask that all our board members do the same. The school district encourages those with disabilities to participate fully in the public meeting process. If you need a disability-related modification or accommodation, including auxiliary aids or services to participate in the public meeting, contact the assistant to the superintendent at j.delatorre@smusd.us or 626-299-7000 extension 1310 at least 48 hours before the scheduled board meeting, so that we may make every reasonable effort to accommodate you. Documents provided to a majority of the board regarding an open session item on this agenda will be made available for public inspection in the district office located at 1665 West Drive, San Marino, during normal business hours. In addition, such writings and documents may be viewed on the district's website at www.smusd.us. So now that I call the meeting to order, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so now we go to item 2B, which is the approval of the agenda. It is an action item. Will someone make a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Okay, Mrs. Ryan, second.
Second.
Mr. Chang. Any discussion? All right, we will now vote. Mr. Kalaki.
Aye.
Mr. Chang.
Aye.
Mrs. Chan. Aye. Mrs. Ryan.
Aye.
Aye for Namjack. All right, that the motion has been approved for the agenda. Public comments, procedural item. The board has adopted board policy 9323B to ensure the public's right to be heard in any matters relating to the school district. Persons who wish to provide public comment will have three options to submit public comments. One, through an online form, request to speak during the meeting via Q&A and phone dial-in. Three, request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. With respect to submitting an online form, the public may submit online comments to the open session on February 17th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Comments received during this time will not be read during the meeting, but will be provided to the board. Have any public comments been made before 2 o'clock?
No.
No. All right, thank you. Request to speak during the meeting via Q&A and phone dial-in. During this process, the meeting will pause for 1 minute to take requests to speak. The raise hand function is used to take requests during the public comment period. For online attendees, press the raise hand icon to add yourself to the queue. For phone attendees, dial *9. The speaking order will be determined based on the order of requests received. Individual speakers will be unmuted and called to speak. Mr. Choi, Dr. Choi.
Thank you. We're pausing for 1 minute to take requests to speak regarding matters on the agenda. If you'd like to make a request, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. 30 seconds remain. If you'd like to make a request to speak, please press the raise hand icon, dial *9, or submit a public comment card. President Jack, we have no requests.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. The third method is request to speak during the meeting in person via the public comment card. Please complete the public comment card, submit the completed card to the designated drop box with the assistant to the superintendent no later than when the agenda section is called by the board president. Opportunities for public comment are offered prior to the discussion section for matters on the agenda. The board reserves a right to add a public comment period prior to any individual item on the agenda. 5 minutes may be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 20 minutes to each subject matter. However, in the event there are more than 4 speakers on the same subject matter, the board president retains the discretion to adjust and limit the time allocated to each speaker to ensure that all wishing to speak will be heard within the 20-minute allotment. Communications from the audience concerning matters on the agenda may be heard at this time, but not responded to by the board. However, we do have a very important guest here. So we have Linda Wah, who is our PCC trustee who represents our district, and she is here on behalf of PCC.
Thank you so much, President Jack, honorable board members. So I just wanted to give you a couple of updates on PCC, which I think will be of interest to you. I did send information. Oh, okay. I did send information to Dr. Delatorre that funding, the grant funding for the K-12 strong workforce, the monies are available for application. One of the things that's happened that's different in the past is that the regional consortium used to be LA and Orange County. As of this year, we have split just to LA, and PCC will be the fiscal agent for distributing those funds. So I encourage you all to think about, I'm encouraging all the districts to think about applying for those funds, especially as you're looking at career education pathways and the monies that could be used for those districts. And I've sent those links out, and I'm happy to send them out again if anyone needs them. Other comments I want to make, I really liked your priorities in your state of this school district. And I think one of the things that was really important was focusing on social well-being and mental health. And it is one of the priorities of PCC. So I also wanted to offer, if there's any opportunities for a partnership of resources, please feel free to call on us. I also wanted to comment that I know you all are thinking about other kinds of enrichment educational opportunities for the San Marino School. I was really happy to see that the 3 dual enrollment classes are in San Marino: kinesiology, psychology, and sociology. So far, I'm hearing good reports back. But I also wanted to offer to you that, if there are, I think we have a lot of great opportunities in the health science and technology. Business continues to be one of the primary majors that many of our students want to go to. And I think I sent you information that this year PCC transferred 39 students directly from PCC into the Cal State Business School. I'm working with the president. I sit on the president's council at Cal State LA. And so I've asked them to consider a 2+2+2, which would link the dual enrollment for business to then only 2 more years to get the bachelor's, and then 2 years into the MBA. And next year, I think we will be establishing a PhD satellite with Cal State LA's Charter College of Education. So for those students who are interested in going to education, I think it's a great opportunity. So I just want you all to consider that, and I wanted you to update it. So thank you very much for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you, Linda.
By the way, as clerk, I think today is a special meeting. I think the public comment had to just point to the focus on this subject. Yeah.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Mr. Chang. All right, now we're going to go to superintendent search firm interviews. The board will interview firms to determine their suitability, expertise, and experience in finding and placing superintendents in the school district. Before we go, the order that they will be presented will be leadership associates at 4:35. Around 5:15 would be approximately Ray and Associates, 5:55 McPherson and Jacobson, and 6:35 the Casca Group. So I wanted to apprise the board that I had contacted a representative of each of the search firms that had responded to the proposal and asked 3 basic questions. are you available today to be interviewed by us, and whether who it would be, and whether or not they would be appearing in person or via Zoom. So Leadership Associates McPherson and the Koska Group will appear in person. Ray and Associates will appear by Zoom. In terms of the way that the timeframes were determined, I asked each of the 4 representatives of the search firms how much time they needed, and all 4 responded about 30 minutes, 15 minutes for their presentation and 15 minutes for our questions, which is why the timeframes are determined in this manner. In terms of asking questions after the presentation, I would ask that each one of us ask 1 question each, and then we keep going around. So that would be what I would request, and then we'll keep going around until we're finished. All right, so.
I have a question.
Sure.
So to be fair to the all 4 consulting company, so how is that we will record the time? Each one they will, yeah. And also
Yeah.
this probably will difficult because also have a Q&A. So how we want to control the time?
Well, I think in terms of the presentations, right, I do think, right, we can limit them, I think 15 to 20, no more than 20 minutes for the presentations, I think, for each.
So should I set a timer for 20 minutes? And once we hit the 20-minute mark, I will remind the board that it's been 20 minutes.
I think that would be fair. Is that all right? Is that all right? I mean, they all said 15 minutes, so I think they can meet that time frame. That's all right, then we'll do it that way. In terms of the Q&A, I don't want to limit that. I don't want to, I mean, I would like to know if we've gone past 20 minutes in terms of the Q&A, but I don't want to limit that in case, people have more questions. So in that respect, I'd like to go. But so Mr. Chang, I do think it's fair that they are limited in terms of their presentation, but in terms of our Q&A, let's try to, we'll give us, unlimited, well, not unlimited, but a reasonable time frame, I think. Thank you for that question. All right, if we're ready to start, I would like to introduce Leadership and Associates. And if you could come up to the podium and introduce yourselves and get ready for the presentation, we'd appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Very, very good. Thank you. President Jack and Vice President Chan, Clerk Mr. Chang, Mr. Kalaki, and Mrs. Ryan. I was going to say Ms., but Mrs. Ryan. Thank you so much. We are honored to be here and to present Leadership Associates as a potential firm to do your superintendent search. We have been in business for a long time, since 1996. I've been with the firm since 2006. We were all successful superintendents. We've had a very successful track record for all of these years, done about 600 searches as a firm. And we again would be honored to be selected by you to help you find the best possible superintendent that's out there. I just have to say, I learned how to drive on Huntington Drive. I lived in Duarte, and the only place my folks would let me drive was Huntington because it's wide, right? So lots of memories there. I appreciate that. I'd like to now have my partners come up and they will introduce themselves. Okay, first, Sandy Sanchez Thorsensen.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Sandy Sanchez Thorstenson. I was the superintendent of the Whittier Union High School District for 14 years and served my entire career there in Whittier Union. And I served as the chair of the CCEE in Sacramento for a few years and chair of the State Superintendency Council. And I'm very pleased to be here this evening. Thank you.
If I may, for a moment. That's us up there. President Jack, trustees, once again, thank you so much, first and foremost, for the opportunity to present this evening. I'm the third leadership associate partner dedicated to the San Marino USD search. My name is Dr. David Verdugo, retired superintendent from Paramount Unified School District, a school district of approximately 17,000 students, a very urban school district in Los Angeles County. I'm the former Deputy Superintendent of Schools in Placentia Yorba Linda in Orange County. Following retirement, I was the Executive Director of CALSA, the California Association of Latino Superintendents, for 6 years, and also ALAS, the national organization, as the Superintendent's Leadership Academy Director in Washington, D.C., where I coached and mentored aspiring superintendents. And if I may, I'd like to mention that I was the interim superintendent in Pasadena for approximately 5 months during Dr. McDonald's absence. We're going to continue on, if I may. Dr. Chow, we're good, right? Okay. I want to mention and make particular important information regarding our administrative support during this search. You can see there on your screens that Becky Banning, Penny Pyle, and Betty Hall are the executive assistants that are assigned to this search. And Leadership Associates has highly qualified executive assistants assigned to each search. And all are former senior executive assistants to actual superintendents. We provide comprehensive on-call support, guidance that the board might need, or perhaps Jennifer De La Torre might need with any board agenda protocols or Brown Act items, personalized written guidelines, templates, samples, checklists, and documents, and very, very prompt responsive response should there be a question, should Jennifer have a question, for example. And we think that this is one particular feature that is particularly important, provides, again, the assistance and support that you need. Going on, we do in fact recognize and commend the accomplishments and the accolades of San Marino Unified School District. You can see them there on the screen as well, whether it's the renewal of Measure E, the outstanding graduation rate, of course, at San Marino High School. Continuing on, really, the summer academy that you have as well. Huntington Middle School's recognition, I believe it was last year, as a National Blue Ribbon School. It's my understanding that that is the only middle school in the entire state of California that was provided that particular honor. Going on, here is a sampling of some of the school districts that we have been involved with. The vast majority of searches, of course, are in California, 600, as was mentioned by Mr. Thome, since 1996. We have been involved with the superintendent searches of some next door neighbors, Monrovia, for example, Duarte, La Habra City School District, Fullerton Joint Union High School District, Tustin, Los Alamitos, and Newport Mesa were all school districts that we did have the opportunity and the honor to do those searches. And I'm really proud to say, by the way, that Leadership Associates conducted approximately 76% of all superintendent searches in the state of California in 2021. And the volume may be surpassed as we move into the 2022 school year. Sandy?
Thank you very, very much. On this slide, we'd like to point out that we have 17 partners in Leadership Associates. And the reason that that's important is so much of the process that we follow will be very similar. You'll hear very similar steps throughout the evening from the other search firms. There's a couple of things that really have a major factor in the differences. And that is that one that Dr. Verdugo mentioned to you, that we have this team of administrative assistants who were superintendents, who worked for superintendents who had been through this search on their end of it. So if we were honored to be selected, then Jennifer would work very closely with Penny Pyle, our teammate on this search, and will be of a tremendous asset and value to her. As well, on this slide, you'll see that throughout the whole state, throughout northern, central, and southern California, we have partners that are located in various parts of the state, but we do work up and down the state. All three of us have done work in Northern California, Central. But the special thing about our team is we're not individual consultants that just come on for a short period of time. This is our work. We work together. We meet every other Tuesday morning via Zoom. We share with one another. If we're to be selected, you'll get the three of us and we'll be boots on the ground serving you. But you'll also have all of our other partners who are on our team, and they will be helping us recruit and vet. We all have networks throughout the state. So we have access to a lot of very, very strong candidates out there through our networks and through our superintendent leadership series and other work that we do that we'll speak about in a short while. So we will be able to find candidates who are a really good match for you. There are lots of people out there that are applying for superintendencies, but they're not always going to be the best match for this particular community. So we're very, very pleased to be able to provide you with our services and our whole team that will be backing this up. And I'll just turn to the next slide. And I mentioned our connections, our network. So all of the entire Leadership Associates team, we have close ties and membership to networks across California and throughout the whole country. And here's a list of some of them: AASA, CALSA, ALAS, AXA, CSBA, CASA, SSS, the Suburban Schools Superintendents, California Collaborative for District Reform, American Leadership Forum, and CSESA, the County Superintendents Organization. So of those 17 that you saw on the map in the previous slide, some of these superintendents, these former superintendents who are our partners, were county superintendents. They were leaders up in Northern California. David did a lot of work in Washington, DC. I did a lot of work in Sacramento. So again, it's a very rich and robust network that we bring to you to be able to find and recruit and thoroughly vet the candidates, so that way when we finish all of that vetting, we can bring to you a slate of very top tiered, top quality candidates that'll be a good match for you. Thank you.
I wanted to point out that one of our keys to success is that we own the company. This is us. You will meet with us all the time, all three of us. We don't farm anything out. We're not hired for just this job. We are really, truly partners. But we wanted to share a little bit about our purpose. Why? Why did these guys decide to do this after they were successful superintendents? And the reason is pretty clear. We believe so strongly in education, deeply in our hearts, that to really form a high-powered democratic society, schools are critically important. That's our why. We want to put the best leaders in the school districts because we realize that that makes a really big difference in the 13 years the children are in your school system. We believe that in our schools and our school district, that impact, if done right, changes lives. It clearly changes lives. So when we all decided to accept the invitation as successful superintendents to join this firm, it was for that very reason, that you can really make a difference in the world. And I know we all were watching the news, and how do we make a difference? How do we get children to really understand values, become productive citizens, understand peace and justice, become good human beings? Schools have a major part. Obviously, parents play a large part as well. So we really value that, and that's why we are here. We're very, very clear about the fact that we value diversity big time. Our partners are all diverse individuals, different languages and races. We try and be as inclusive as possible. Sandy mentioned every other week we meet. We talk to each other every day. This is our main work. It's not like we're out there doing other things and then we take a gig, if you will. It's not us. By the way, I'm smiling. You can't see it, but I am. Because I'm so proud of Leadership Associates and so pleased to be here. And by the way, I was a football player and played against San Marino a lot in 63 and 64. Now you guys were good. They really were. But back to what I was saying. So everybody deserves a good leader, and we have been so fortunate, as David mentioned, 76%. The reason that we're able to achieve that is because we really do customize. You really will control your own search. We don't like have a template and we customize. We'll find out what you want and we'll go out and get it. So thank you for listening to that. So our executive searches leave no stone unturned. We we really do recruit nationally, even though we're a California firm. We realize that although it's difficult for folks from out of state to come here and afford to live and understand that we have collective bargaining, that we're not a state that has, free reign. We have to always negotiate contracts, et cetera. But we realize that if we can bring people in that believe that when a teacher gets her credential, that's not the end, that's the beginning. It's a license to learn. We believe in professional growth fully, and we really advocate for that with anybody that we are fortunate to lead you to in our search process. So we also are very, very proud, and Sandy will mention it, that we train about a third of the superintendents in California. And Sandy will go into that in another slide. But I just wanted to mention that because our why is really critical to why we've been successful. I think it is probably with every profession. Why are you doing this? And if you're doing it for a job and money, it doesn't work. You got to do it from the heart, and that's what we do. And I think you're up next, Dr. Verdugo. Slide up.
Mr. Thone talked about the why, but why us is really the question in terms of the selection of the search firm. Some of those whys, why us, I've tried to demonstrate or answer on this particular slide. We remain actively engaged. Many of us are still involved in a variety of associations and organizations. We have a variety of leadership experiences, as well as partners, as was emphasized. We are not consultants. We do not consider ourselves consultants. We're very mission focused. We've always been involved with continuous improvement. We're dedicated to partnering with trustees, with boards of education, highly quality, culturally responsive leaders, and help those leaders continue to improve the quality of their work. As was mentioned, the diverse needs of California's diverse population is particularly important to us. And I think one thing that I would point out in 2020-21, 67% of our finalists selected were women or candidates of color. And I believe that's an important aspect. And again, it's been emphasized, California-based and California savvy. Thank you.
I mentioned a moment ago that we, in addition to serving school boards through executive searches, we also have executive leadership development that we're engaged in. So we are committed to helping school boards find the very best leaders to serve the boards, their school districts, and the students that you all serve. We also are committed to providing ongoing support and training for superintendents to support them in a very, very challenging job, extremely challenging under the best of circumstances, and even more so given COVID and all the other challenges of our current time. So through this executive leadership development work that we do, as you can see up on the screen, we work with 7 counties with 180 districts through 7 counties in the Superintendent Leadership Series. I help to, I co-facilitate for Los Angeles County, San Diego, and Orange counties. And we also have Superintendent Leadership Networks. And by the way, the Superintendent Leadership Series, there's no cost to the school district. The county office supports the superintendents in that training. And the networks have served 47 districts. We also work with assistant superintendents, and we also provide interactive board governance workshops, organizational audits, board superintendent evaluations to help support and facilitate that process. And on, as you see there on the bulleted list. This work is gratifying to us because it's important not just to be able to provide you with the top tier of quality candidates, but to help you ensure that that person is going to be highly successful. The work matters. You know, there's children's lives that you're affecting day to day that'll have long-term effect. And when we were superintendents and stepped off our superintendency, we didn't lose the passion for this work and serving children. So it's very gratifying for us to be able to work with school boards and superintendents and their assistant superintendents to ensure that kids are getting the very best. It's also helpful through this work that we see these people regularly, superintendents and assistant superintendents, so we can see the quality of the leadership out there up and down the state. So it really helps us immensely in our recruiting efforts too. So the executive leadership development side of our firm and the executive search side is integrated. It's very wonderful symbiotic relationship that helps support one another. Thank you.
How are we doing on time, are we?
We're 3 minutes away from the 20-minute mark.
Okay, good. So we have a formula and it's up here on the screen. And I won't go through all of it, but we make sure that our searches start with you. They end with you, obviously, because you make a selection. So throughout our process, and it's in our timeline that you will see, we have a phase in which we do the recruitment. I mean, you hire a firm to do extensive recruitment, background checking, and to bring you the highest quality candidates that you can. That is spelled out here in our chart. But literally what I'll say to you is that if you, we hope you choose us, but these things have to be done. You have to know, number one, that we're going to communicate with you. The worst thing is a search firm you hire and then you never hear from them. That's not a good thing. And then also you want that vetting, you want that background checking, and you want all of that. Finally, we come back, show you all the candidates, not just the ones that we think are good, but all of them. We recommend some that we believe are the perfect match. I got to hurry before my 20 minutes is up. So here's a timeline that kind of tells you what we'd like to do. This is variable. When we meet, if we're selected, we'll meet and we'll make this solid. But we will get this done, as you can see, somewhere mid-May or early May, depending on how rapid you want to search. But again, that's your call, because you want to make sure that we've had time and you've had time to vet all of the candidates. Closing thoughts, we don't charge extra. We have to come up here all the time. We don't charge you mileage. We don't charge you, housing, none of that. All-inclusive fee. Our search is your search. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Our team is highly qualified, makes it easy on Mrs. De La Torre, because there's a little bit that the district has to do. Personalized, as I mentioned, effective and high tech. High tech in that everything you need is online, so that you can, wherever you are, you can tune in and hear what's going on. And again, we have a national reach California firm. I just want to say in closing, and I probably have 5 seconds, right? In closing, I want to say that you are a tremendous board. We've studied you deeply in the last couple of weeks, last month actually. And the fact that you were able to pass Proposition E, the Measure E, I'm sorry, that you have produced graduates of the quality that you have. Is it her? No.
Yes, Mrs. Jack is asking.
What's that? Oh, very, very good. I see. The 126 graduates, I don't need to, the numbers. We put them in our thing as well, but it's always the board. You're the leaders. You guide us, the superintendents. We really do look to your guidance, and sometimes it seems like the superintendent's off just doing his thing. Never would a good superintendent not be listening to the board daily about what you need. With that, I guess it's time for questions, sir.
All right. Well, Rich, thank you so much. Sandy and David, very, very much. We will start our questioning, and Dr. Choi, if you could start the time, not that will limit our questions, but Mr. Kalaki, would you like to start?
I have to apologize. I need to, in about 5:10 or so, I have to be on a Zoom call for a legal matter, but I'm just going to go, and our team is here, but I'll stay here for a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come.
Thank
We
you very
very
much.
much appreciate it. Mr. Kalaki?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to know what you consider will be San Marino Unified's the benefits and the challenges of our district with regard to candidates.
I'll start off with that. Your quality, you want a high quality person for sure. Someone that seriously understands the success you've had and doesn't come in with a template from the last district, but really continue the great work you've done, because look at the results that you have made. I mean, it's just incredible. So that's really important. Challenges. I mean, everyone says COVID, of course. COVID is a dark cloud over us, hopefully slowly dissipating. That'll be a challenge. We'll find some good, very good candidates. The challenges they'll face are California budget that isn't always where we'd like it to be. You're not totally required to, you're not state, mandated to do everything, but the budget situation is always a challenge. And obviously accelerating student achievement for those that may fall behind. Anything else?
No, I would just say again that some of those things are generic in the sense that if you're looking at the horizon, the fiscal aspects of things, the social emotional needs of students, of course, that have been affected by the closure of schools or the virtual learning and the lack of personalized attention in the classroom, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good question.
Mr. Chang?
For the last 2 years, meaning from January 2020 to now, how many superintendent search agreement you retain?
How many we retained?
Yeah.
I think I believe I can answer that. I believe that the number is 85% of all the superintendents that were held to be placed have been there at least 5 years or more. Does that answer that question? Is that right?
In fact, Mr. Chang, if I may add to that, we will not recruit someone who's not been in a school district for a minimum of 5 years. We think the research indicates that the 5 to 7 year pattern of longevity is really very critical. Now, that's not to say that there aren't outstanding individuals that are ready for the superintendency. So I want to make sure that I understand that you can understand that. But the point being is that that's the commitment that we make to the school districts and to the individuals and to the trustees as well.
Thank you.
Mrs.
And
John?
by the way, we will not ever come back. If we bring you a superstar, which we think we can, we'll never come back and try and pull that person and say, hey, there's another job up there in the Bay Area. What about that? We don't do that.
Mrs. John?
Thank you. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to your recruitment strategies for whether or not you're actively recruiting or if you're relying on publications and networks. And also along those lines, if you represent people who are seeking superintendent positions as well.
Yeah, let me start with the last question. We don't represent any superintendents. We represent the board. And we make that very clear to the candidates. Our networking strategy, our recruitment strategy has to do a lot with our networks. The fact that we've been the longest lasting firm and the highest successful firm in the last 5 years or so gives us a tremendous network of people that we can call and say, we know that you went through our process. You know of anybody that would be great? We knock on doors of people that are sitting superintendents that don't know they're going to come to Santa Marina. They don't know that we're going to recruit them, but we do that recruitment, but we do it through large networks. We have county superintendents among our active partners. We have people in all areas of the state, as Sandy indicated, that we have contacts, state and national. We use those contacts, and that's what we do daily. We're on the phone recruiting. So we actually recruit, certainly do not rely on just people that apply, nor do we have, quote unquote, a stable of people over here that, hey, Jack, here's a new one. Sorry about using the word Jack. Hey, Tom, here's a new one.
And Mr. John, if I may add with respect to that recruitment, what's good about?
Thank you very much.
Thank
I'll
you.
excuse myself with your
coming.
permission.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Much of that, Mr. Chong, depends on the match and the fit, of course, the characteristics and the traits that you folks desire. That position description is extremely important as we capture those not only from the trustees, but also from the stakeholders accordingly. I'm sorry. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Ryan?
So San Marino is a high-performing, active, engaged community. We have partnerships, as you heard, with PCC and other agencies. When you are recruiting, what are the qualities that you look for, knowing the characteristics of our community? And how will you speak to how they will be able to transition from, brand new honeymoon stage to a more, after the first year, in terms of helping with matching that candidate to the changes that are coming down?
David had mentioned a little earlier, and all the firms will do stakeholder input sessions. So there's really two major keys to all of this work. Initially, the stakeholder input sessions, and that begins with the board, to ask all of you, what specifically are you looking for as far as the skills, qualities, characteristics, what matters most to you, not just in technical skills, but really leadership style that would fit your particular community. And then we obtain a list from you, the board, of all the different groups in the entire school district, certificated classified staff, administrative staff, parents, students, community leaders, any others that are voices that need to be involved in this process. And then we ask them the same questions. What's most important to San Marino? What's most important in the type of leader that is needed to serve the kids of San Marino Unified? So we compile all of that data. We provide you with a report with all that data, and that helps us to develop a position description that is a wonderful recruiting tool that helps us to identify leaders who are a good match. Not everyone's going to be the right fit for San Marino. So when we are recruiting, then we know we have in mind, and on our regular calls with our partners, we tell them this is what we're looking for, this type of person, and they'll help us through all of our networks that we shared previously to help find a pool of really, really strong candidates from which you will choose. And then we'll continue on with support for that person. We will invite them to join the Superintendent Leadership Series, and hopefully they would have a coach as well. It's a very challenging position, so it's important for anybody in that high level of a position to have advisement.
And Mrs. Ryan, we go a step further in regards to those characteristics and traits that we need to acquire from you folks and obviously your stakeholders. And that is, what are the strengths of the district and what are the challenges of the district? So that we have a stronger sense of the type of character and leader that you need, that we need to recruit. And of course, the vetting, the comprehensive vetting process or reference checking is extremely important. And we do that, whether it's financial, criminal, Google searches, so on and so forth. But again, that's prior to bringing you every person that applies for the position. We will, however, be able to provide you what we might call tier one candidates, those that are the best match and fit, but then we will deliberate and describe those for you accordingly.
The report that we provide to you after all of the data that we collect on the stakeholder input sessions is a real value to you as the board. It's also a real value to whoever it is that you select as your new superintendent. They receive that. And as David mentioned, it'll have the community's input on what they believe are the best strengths of San Marino Unified. What are the challenges the school district faces? And what do they really expect as far as qualities and leadership style? It's a wealth of information and a real treasure for a brand new superintendent to read through this very, very extensive report, to have understanding before they even start day one, to know what the expectations are from the board and also of the staff and community.
And I should mention also, if I might, Mrs. Ryan, the fact that we have a electronic survey that is made available to all of your constituents as well in various languages accordingly. That information also gets embedded into the executive summary for you as well. Once that executive summary is in the hands of you and or the new superintendent, then you can actually begin to strategize on that 100-day plan, that 90-day plan, those priorities, those challenges accordingly.
Thank you.
My question has to do with what is the market for what you believe is the individual that we are looking for? I mean, are there a lot of superintendent job openings? Is the market large? Is it is there a large pool of candidates that are looking to move? Or are there a large pool of job openings? And what does it look like for a small district like ours?
Well, if I may, I'll begin, and then Sandy might want to chip in a little bit as well. The volume of resignations in the state of California as it relates to superintendents has never been higher. You can imagine the stress and the pressure as a result of COVID and some of the other aspects of leadership. Having said that, we are keenly looking at and determined to get a stronger sense of who's filling those gaps. Who's in line for that seat, if I can put it that way bluntly. What Sandy mentioned earlier about the work that we do with assistant superintendents up and down the state gives us a much better sense and feel of the potential candidates that would be out there that are that match and fit. So granted, in reality, there's a number of openings, particularly in 2021. We're beginning to see a high volume of superintendents saying, if I meet the criteria, pension-wise and so on, I'm going to leave. Again, there's a gap there, but we believe through Leadership Associates and the work that we do on the other side of the house has really started to prepare us even better for, again, the filling of those gaps.
There are lots of openings, but there are also an amazing number of people who are still very passionate about wanting to lead despite the challenges of COVID and other issues. So we are absolutely confident that San Marino is going to attract strong candidates. It's a highly regarded, highly respected school district, rightfully so. And that helps us. That helps us in our recruiting efforts. So you won't have to worry.
Thank you. Mr. Kalaki?
Yeah, with regard to the stakeholder input, can you tell me what stakeholder groups you would include and how would that input?
Everyone you
work?
want.
And we provide a template or a list that we provide and work with Jennifer in this case in order to generate that opportunity. We can either do it via Zoom or we can do it in person, including a community forum and perhaps one of your gymnasiums or multi-purpose rooms. We are available for you. That typically takes over 2 days, sometimes 3 days, to acquire as much information as we can. But that's part of the stakeholder input. Then I mentioned the survey as well. But the initial list that we provide the board, you are more than welcome. In fact, we suggest add to it. Is the foundation not on there? Is Pasadena City College not on there? You want to add that. Is the Rotary members not on there? So very flexible, but it really is a template for you to utilize. And then we in turn take that information. We also provide information through the administrative assistant to Jennifer and others, Dr. Chow, for example, how to best get that survey on your website. How do we best advertise it? How do we monitor it? We monitor that survey typically every other day to determine if the numbers are being generated that should be there. And if not, might we have some kind of social media to send out to your stakeholders to increase that number?
And Penny Pyle, who I mentioned previously, is our teammate. She will be working side by side. You're going to absolutely love Penny if you get to work with her. She knows this work really well, and she's extremely adept at technology and helping to make sure, working hand in hand with Jennifer. So that way that online survey is up and running, and it'll be on your website for a couple of weeks. And then we'll also provide you with all that data, all the responses in a report. It's fascinating information. It's really, really helpful going forward for the school board.
I've been retired for about 8 years, 8.5 years, and I still call my executive assistant for assistance in my former school district. So we know how important Jennifer is in that regard.
Me too.
Mr. Chang?
What is the average tenure of a superintendent in California right now?
Oh, their average tenure.
My question have two portions. So this first one, after you answer, then I will.
Okay,
Have a-
sure. It really depends on the size of the district. Large urban school districts, it's maybe 2.5, 3 years is the average tenure. It's better for smaller districts, and it really depends on the geography and probably the biggest factor is really the political climate of the school district.
Sandy was a superintendent for 13,
14.
14
14
years.
years.
I was a superintendent for 9 years.
Yes, that's amazing, but my next question, because your firm been served for our school district during my tenure, so 3 superintendent. So the average they are like stay less than 3 years. So you think is a normal or there's something?
It's very, very hard to get work deeply rooted in just 3 years. You know, it's work that has to be, you have to till the soil constantly, you know, it's not something that can be done in just a few years. So it's why it's so important for superintendents to have coaching, to have support. You know, and when we work with them in the executive leadership development side of our firm, we have them network with other superintendents of like-sized districts, of like political climate districts, so that way they have others that they can lean on. So we facilitate that in Leadership Associates. We provide content for them that's rich and relevant, very timely. A lot of things are going on right now that we provide them. We research, we spend a lot of time researching, the Harvard Business Review, all sorts of other sources that have very applicable articles and readings that will help superintendents navigate this political climate, the very intense polarization across our country and with COVID in particular.
And if I may, we're very familiar with very high performing school districts such as you. In fact, I happen to have been the search consultant for Los Alamitos, the highest performing Orange County school district. Also Reed, Kentville in Marin County. So we have experience with those dynamics.
Thank you. Mrs. Chan?
Thank you. Given COVID, the changes and challenges in education over the last few years, the changes in economics and politics and the political climate, how has your search processes changed over the last few years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever you identify for me, because I don't know.
We certainly have adapted as everyone else had. As we mentioned, the outreach to the community is so critical. We used to do all of that in person. And since COVID first started in the early 2020, we've done it all via Zoom. And what we found is there's actually been an increase in participation by offering the Zoom, that we still will push out the online survey constantly to make sure everybody knows that almost to the point of ad nauseum, to remind people, don't forget, we really need to have your response to the online survey. So we have just switched to be more relying more on technology to be able to reach out to people. So we meet everybody's needs. It's not, we certainly have protocols that we follow because all of us we have a standard of excellence that we all serve within all of our partners, but we also want to make sure that it's a very personalized search. Every community is a little bit different. Every board's a little bit different. So we are here to serve you. What we tell people when we are on these stakeholder input sessions is that we're the ambassadors for the board, that the board has sent us to talk with them because the board is very, very committed to a very inclusive process. So it's been a pleasure to do this work, and we hope it will serve you.
And that opportunity to obtain stakeholder input, we do that on an individual basis as well. So if the board would provide us the opportunity, or you have a desire for us to speak to somebody independently, uniquely, individually, we certainly have that outreach opportunity as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Ryan?
No questions at this time.
All right. So I looked over your proposal and it says that you'll provide a 1-year guarantee if the superintendent leaves. But many search firms have 2-year guarantees. So my question to you is that 1-year guarantee set in stone? Is that?
Actually, we just had an extensive conversation about that among our partners. And we thought, because we believe so strongly in the governance team working together, the superintendent and the board members, and we decided as a team that we would be willing to offer a 2-year guarantee if the board and the superintendent are committed to providing mid-year evaluation for the superintendent, having a formal evaluation at the end of the year, and having support provided to that superintendent, because that's so critical. It's not, it's what's necessary to make sure that the superintendent is going to be successful. And having, throwing somebody into the deep end, without any support is not the way to guarantee success. So as long as there's support there, and that there's regular communication, and there's and the majority of the board stays in place, because sometimes there's not only a change up with superintendents and having short tenure, but also it's very difficult when there's a lack of stability at the board level. The board matters tremendously, and if there's a stable, high-quality board, it's smooth sailing, and the superintendents will be fine with support that they receive.
We believe that healthy organization is really very, very critical for the needs of the students and families that you serve, obviously. I personally, and I know I can speak for Sandy on this, her being a superintendent for 14 years, me for 9 years, it was the closest thing to a marriage that I ever discovered. And in June, I'll be married 50 years. So as I twitch a little bit here, just kidding. But my point is that we do believe that that's really very, very critical, that opportunity to communicate, to be a team. We don't even call them retreats anymore. We call them advances when we do meet with boards and governance teams.
So I guess my question is, so you would do a 2-year guarantee, but there would be conditions attached to that,
That's
right?
exactly right.
So, okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Kalaki?
I've got no questions right now, thanks.
Mr. Chang?
My question, since your firm has experience with us a couple times, so I don't know how you will recommend the candidate to us, because look like the past superintendent, they don't stay very long. I know definitely is not your issue. I think it's a very complicated, all the factors together, but I mean how can find a motivate the candidate. They have a strong awareness they can overcome during the beginning, the couple years, then they can make the community and school community to persuade them that this is the superintendent. We need to work together for long term. Yeah.
I apologize to interrupt. I just wanted to remind the board that we have exhausted the second 20-minute mark.
Oh,
now.
it's been 40?
Okay.
All right, okay.
Please
Alrighty.
just answer.
Okay,
Mr.
sure.
Chang's
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We just compiled some data and looked at the number of school districts, school boards that we've served multiple times. That shows amazing repeat business. We hadn't actually looked at that data before, but we looked at that, and we have served school districts up and down. It's part of the reason why we have such a high percentage of searches that we serve throughout the state. We also tell people who are applying for superintendency that's not for the faint of heart. It's not an easy position. It's a great challenge, but it's such an important commitment to make. It's incredibly gratifying work, although it's incredibly challenging as well. And we tell them they have to have very frequent communication with their board, very frequent communication with staff and community, the highest level of effective communication, clarity that they need to provide, inclusiveness that they need to seek, high visibility on the campuses and in the community. So we share with them all these things that have to be absolutely in place for them to be successful, and then provide them continual support. So there's a lot of factors. You're absolutely right. It's a complex job. It's if the board stays intact and there's that regular communication, and the evaluation isn't a gotcha, but it's really a communication all the way through the whole process, then there's a much greater chance for success.
Which
It doesn't
speaks
have to be a revolving door.
Which speaks
Sorry.
volumes of relationships. The fact is that relationships are really critical, the building of trust, the bringing in of good, strong systems. problem solving, potential problem solving, all of those things come in unison with you as a team and the superintendent, of course.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Trusting relationships are the foundation.
Thank you, Mrs. Strong.
I just had I don't know if it's going to be a hard question to answer or not. Of the 85% that have a 5-year retention rate, how many of those would be new to be a superintendent as opposed to they had moved from one superintendency to another?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that data off the top of my head. Do you know that?
No, I'm going to generalize, Mrs. Chon, to say that probably 3/4 of the group of people that are hired as superintendents by leadership associates in the varied school districts have already been in the seat, and that the balance is most likely those that are coming from deputy superintendent positions, associate superintendent positions, and according to the hierarchy or your org chart, assistant superintendents. But those, I would say, are extremely comprehensive. By that, I mean, it's not someone who simply has HR experience. If this were 07 or 08, when we were going through the Great Recession, many school districts were hiring primarily as their superintendents, CBOs, chief business officers. We now know, because of the LCAP and LCFF, the need really to work together in all of those various cabinet departments. So I think the point I would make is that all of those people have a very comprehensive skill set.
Thank you.
All right, and this is my last question. So, and I can't remember whether you guys had already responded, but do you guys, have that non-compete, non-contact provision for a set period of time? So you won't be contacting our superintendent
Absolutely.
to take his or her place?
Oh, yes.
So what is that
Absolutely.
time frame? 2 years? What is it?
It's 5 years.
5 years.
5 years. Okay, I think
5
you did
years.
say that. Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, I believe Mr. Kalaki, you were done. I believe Mrs. Ryan, you were done. Mr. Chang, are you done with your questions? All right, great. Mrs. Chang? done?
I had one question.
Okay.
How many searches do you engage in during the season, one season?
I'm doing one other search at this point in time. I do a lot of work on the executive leadership development side of our house. So I do the superintendent leadership series and a network and some coaching.
And I just completed the Santa Maria Bonito superintendent search for the elementary school district on the Central Coast. I'm also coming to closure on the Lancaster Elementary School District. And that's the only active searches that I'm on. Good question, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you on behalf of the board. We appreciate you taking the time to come. Sandy, David, we really, really appreciate it. So thank you very, very much. And we're going to ask you to exit that away.
Thank you. Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Good luck.
Have a wonderful
Thank you very
evening.
much.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
your help.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Choi.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Have a
you.
good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have Ray and Associates team in the waiting room. I will go ahead and admit them.
Thank you.
Okay, President Jack, it looks like the Ray and Associates team is now online.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for waiting. I apologize. As you can imagine, everything seems to take a lot longer than we thought. So we appreciate you taking the time to come and present to us via Zoom. If you would like to introduce yourselves and begin your presentation, we would appreciate it. In order to be fair, we are giving each search firm 20 minutes to make a presentation. In terms of board questions, we will not be limited to the 20 minutes. So just to let you know ahead of time that it will be at 20 minutes and Dr. Choi will be timing it. So thank you, welcome, and please introduce yourselves.
Okay, good evening, Honorable San Marino Board of Education members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for providing us the opportunity to join you this evening. We really do appreciate the ability to participate with you virtually this evening. Our team is delighted to be with you this evening and to share with you what sets us apart in our approach to superintendent searches. Since you have our RFQ responses, we do not plan, because of the amount of time available to us, to cover its content with you during this presentation, but rather we'll provide a quick overview addressing some of the areas you seek to learn about, and then welcome questions from the board for the remainder of our allotted time. First off, I'd like to allow me, please, to introduce to you our team. We all come to you as current experienced public education. You have our bios in the RFQ. With a broad stroke, we come to you with over 100 years in public education experience and 85 years in leadership roles. We really do have a deep understanding of ed policy and laws and the historical context of public education across this country. We do this work because it gives us all an opportunity to help school districts find their right leader to fulfill this most important role. It's our way of giving back to public education and the profession we honor. Next slide, please. Go back, please. One more, sorry. Okay, this is our team. Bob Mata, Jan Besley, Barb Goodwin, Steve Chestnut. So if you will, we'll take, each of us will take just a minute to introduce ourselves to you. I've been in the profession across 4 different states, New Mexico, Colorado, Iowa, and California. And ultimately, as a superintendent, I served a K-12 district that was a bilingual school district all across the K-12 experience. I'm a nationally certified multicultural trainer, and I'm presently working with the state of California to help implement the California roadmap as part of my work. Jan?
Get off of mute. Good evening. My name is Dr. Jan Besley, and I come to this search with 45 years in education, most recently as a superintendent in a highly diverse, high-performing school district where most schools are recognized on Arizona's A+ list, with 2 of those schools with blue ribbon distinction. My consulting work has reached throughout the United States, but includes several districts throughout California, including several years of work with Monrovia School District. I would welcome the opportunity to support San Marino's superintendent search process. Barb?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Barbara Goodwin, and I come to you with 37 years of public education experience, both in a K-8 system and a K-12 system, both rural and suburban. The last district in which I served, there were 98% of the students came in with their primary language other than English. And so I've worked in a high economic district and also a very low socioeconomic district. My expertise that I'm bringing to the team is 20 years of leading HR departments in very large school districts. My doctorate degree is in organizational psychology. So I focus on systems and making sure that we're in compliance.
Good evening. My name is Steve Chestnut. I was a K-12 superintendent for 21 years in Washington State and then another 6 years in Arizona. I retired 2 years ago from the Scottsdale Unified School District as a district administrator. Scottsdale Unified is a high expectation, high achievement district, very much like San Marino. And I continue to live in Scottsdale. Since retiring, in addition to working part-time with Ray & Associates, I've worked part-time as an executive consultant with Learn Platform, which is an ed tech effectiveness system for school districts, where I've been responsible for outreach to superintendents in 7 Western states. So it's a pleasure to be with you this evening.
Thank you, folks. Next slide, please. As you can see on the slide, Ray & Associates has been in the school executive search business since 1975. We are approaching 50 years in very soon here. We do have a strong recruitment network of associates across the country, a full-time staff that lifts the burden off the school, off the district staff as we proceed with our searches. We recruit the nation's educational leaders. That is our primary business. Our experience has taught us that continual improvement of our process will keep us on the cutting edge of the profession, along with including in this work a very strong vetting process that allows no surprises on candidates. Next slide, please. Over 40% of our associates are women and persons of color, providing different perspectives as we vet candidates and prepare our candidate pools. The videos of, we offer you videos of our top candidates as part of the application materials. And we do have a scoring instrument matrix to build consensus with the board on candidates. As this business to around diversity, similar to your organization, our organization values strategies that build upon the strengths found in diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. It would be an honor to work with a district such as yourselves who have a deep commitment to DEI. Next slide, please. This is our background information related to our values and beliefs regarding inclusion, equity, and elimination of institutional racism. What's important to note is your commitment, as we have come to learn, to inclusion and equity. And the evidence of that is we've been studying about San Marino or the educational services that meet the needs of at least 18 different ethnic populations, TK-12 in your district. We also know that you have a PK program for developmentally disabled students, that there are high academic standards and offerings across all grades, and also too, that you also include summer academies and the Right at School programs, before and after school programs. What's also nice in looking at and beginning to understand and learning about your district is that when you look at your information across the schools, it's very evident that your handbooks at all levels emphasize respect and value for living in a multi-ethnic world, and that your resources through the LCAP and the local control funding formula are specifically designated to support high-need students in your district. We are also aware of the fact that your district is a high-ranking district across California, and you are able, and as such, you've been able to provide very important services and allowing students to exceed standards, even, for example, along the CASP. I know when I worked at the LA County Office of Education, when the index was the California API, San Marino was constantly up either at the top or in the top 5. Jen?
Next slide, please. We draw candidates from our national and regional pools to ensure that we find candidates that are aligned to your profile that you have defined for your next superintendent. Through rigorous recruitment efforts, we typically secure 30 to 40 completed applications, but we've also had this number go up significantly depending upon the district. We work closely with our applicants to maintain strong interest to gain well-qualified and aligned candidates that you're seeking. Next slide, please. First and foremost, we want to reassure you that this is your search. The San Marino Board of Education provides direction for all phases of the search process, which begins with identifying the profile of your ideal candidate and ends with your selection of your new superintendent. Next slide, please. We will also establish timelines and processes with the board for the desired scope of community involvement and activities to reach our targeted selection deadline. To develop a profile for your ideal candidate, we conduct individual board interviews to gather data regarding your desired qualities and characteristics for the incoming superintendent. All board interview data is then summarized into a confidential report for the entire board to review. Another component of our profile in collecting data is collecting data among all of your stakeholder candidates with a 33 quality survey to include board members as well, along with the targeted San Marino community. To collect then we collect the aggregated prioritization of desired qualities for your next superintendent. So we send out this survey to all of the stakeholder groups that you identify, and as well as the board that takes a survey. And then it helps, then we will aggregate all of that data into the different subgroups and be able to share a comprehensive report with the board, which really begins to help the board see what the patterns and trends are from their stakeholders about what are those desired characteristics. Our team will also conduct focused stakeholder group sessions to collect qualitative narrative around what qualities, experience, character traits that they seek in the next superintendent. Again, we work with the board on the selection of those stakeholder or those focus groups that you would like for us to conduct those focus group sessions. All data is aggregated by groups and again presented to the board by the Ray and Associates team, which you will utilize to create a profile to be used for advertising and screening of applicants. Next slide, please. With San Marino Superintendent completed profile, our team is then ready to begin our recruitment. Utilizing associates throughout the country, we personally recruit candidates who have the specific skills that you have identified for your district. This is a significant strength of our firm. We not only use our associates, but utilize recruitment activities such as various state and national conventions, our website, which routinely receives over 28,000 monthly inquiries, and a database of 5,000 potential candidates that we reach out to with every superintendent posting. We also advertise a position in productive national venues and through other channels such as Facebook, Twitter, and media known for high readership by educational leaders. In the next slide, my colleague, Dr. Goodwin, will discuss our candidate pool.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth so that you can feel confident that we bring you the highest quality candidates. We generally recommend that you have an open window of 4 weeks for us to do our work, do our outreach. We do it a significant amount throughout that 4 weeks. And as a team, we keep you updated weekly on the number of completed or in-process applicants. Your Ray and Associates team would be working tirelessly throughout the application window. And we use an in-depth training tool to vet the applicants and bring you the highest quality. Our motto is we want to do the heavy lifting for you, but we also want to make your job difficult because we bring you such a strong pool of candidates that you're going to have to really work to decide which one you'd like to choose as your next leader of your district. We use, as I said, an in-depth screening tool, and that's based on those qualities and characteristics that Jan talked about in the couple of slides ago, which is driven by you, the governing board. Not only do we complete in-depth paper screening, we also complete an extensive social media check. We call and interview all references personally. We interview each of the top candidates ourselves and create an in-depth report, which we will then share with you. We also have the top 8 to 12 candidates complete a short video answering questions created by you or your constituency groups. All of this is shared with you prior to you, the San Marino Board of Education, selecting who you would like to move forward to the first round of interviews. Your finalists also receive a complete criminal, civil, social security check, motor vehicle records check, verification of educational records, degrees, and certification. Another one of our mottos is, as Bob said earlier, we want no surprises for the governing boards that we serve. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about your selection of the candidates. You control totally who moves forward through the interview process. We facilitate your discussion by providing you with various data points. You will look at all candidates both quantitatively and qualitatively. You, as board members, drive the decision-making process. Next slide, please. As we're finalizing the search, once your finalists have been selected, we work alongside you as you move into that final round of interviews. Sometimes you choose to have a community forum. Other times you choose to have videotaped where people can watch it. It goes to a wide variety of folks that you'd send it to, and they can give you feedback through impression sheets, which you can take into consideration as you move into your finalist round. Once your finalist is selected, we work alongside you and your legal counsel to finalize the contractual agreement. Once completed, we circle back in a few months later, and we ask you as a board to complete a self-assessment regarding the process and its success. This information is helpful to you as you continue to build your leadership team. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Steve.
Thank you, Barb. Next slide, please. There we go. As you can imagine, school boards say good things about us, and we're very proud of that. In fact, that second quote is from Alhambra Elementary School District here in Phoenix, and Barb and I were on that team and had a very successful search there. So as Bob mentioned, this is something that we greatly enjoy working with boards of education to find outstanding superintendents for their vacancies. Next slide, please. So just in summary, so we can get to your questions, we have a unique size and scope as we have described. We believe in engagement, and that is either virtual or in person. We have really become expert in the last 2 years during the pandemic at virtual superintendent searches. And we know that our audience is very accustomed to virtual as well. And we're happy to do a virtual search entirely. We're happy to do a hybrid where we are on site for some events and virtual for some. So if you need us there in person, 1, 2, or 3 of us, we can be there, and that is not a problem. We are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the search process, as Bob mentioned. We facilitate the San Marino Board's leadership in the search process. This is your search. We customize searches to meet your needs. We're very accustomed to that, and we recognize that we are working for you to find the next superintendent. And then we provide guarantees. We have a 2-year guarantee that if there is a resignation or termination in that 2-year period, we will come back and conduct that search for free. The only charge would be for travel if that was included. But we're also very proud of the fact that our average tenure of superintendents that we place is 8 years, which is really quite an extraordinary number. And it speaks, I think, to the high quality of candidates that we have been placing in recent years. We also have a 5-year guarantee that we will not recruit your superintendent during that time period, and we guarantee to do that. And in the interest of time, I think I'll skip the last 2 slides, and I do believe we're ready for your questions.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. And we're now going to start with Mr. Chang. Would you like to ask the first question?
Please explain your understanding of experience with the San Marino community and the school district.
I believe, as Bob said earlier, we've all done research. We had a phone conference earlier today talking about your district, going extensively into your background, the qualities of programs, the high academic achievement. We've also looked at your surrounding communities, the length of those of you that have served on the board. Thank you very much. We're all very appreciative of that as well. Your teaching staff, your lack of turnover, that you have high retention. But we also understand that times have changed in the last couple of years. So we want to be open to new issues that maybe aren't as easily found on the internet or tracking down information around what you have to offer. We're all extremely excited about this opportunity, though. You're an amazing district. It's very clear.
Thank you.
Mrs. Chan?
I just had an easy question. Do you represent candidates as people who are seeking superintendency employment as well?
I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm not understanding this correctly. We do have a pool of candidates, but 70% of our placements don't come from our pool. We do extensive outreach through a variety of media. And we attract, I mean, on all of the, I think probably between all of us, we've probably all worked on 30 or 40 superintendent searches. We have a different pool every time. And sometimes they're brand new to Ray and Associates. So we're not pushing candidates on you. We're trying to find the best candidates for you based on the criteria that you set.
That's why we spend the time that we do helping for you to identify your profile of the candidate that had the ideal characteristics and traits. And once that profile is identified, then all of us go out into our networks and we look for candidates that are a very close match to the components that you have identified that are incredibly important to your district. I know we just recently completed a search in the Phoenix area, Madison School District, very, very similar to your district. And it became very obvious that there was an individual in another district that was very closely aligned, but she wasn't necessarily going to apply for that district, but we reached out to her. And in fact, she was the candidate that was selected because she was such a good match. And so that's a part of our work in terms of identifying candidates based on the profile that you develop. And then we go out into our networks and start working to bring those candidates to you.
Thank you. Mrs. Ryan?
Thank you, Mrs. Jack. What area are you guys from?
Yeah, where,
Like, where
we
are you
are-
located?
Okay, I'm located in Cathedral City, just a couple hours east of you. Jan, Barb, and Steve are in Arizona in the Phoenix area and Tucson.
Mhm. And so how robust are your candidates in terms of the California area? And the reason why I asked that question is candidates have various leadership skills, but indicative of the area, you have to be familiar with the qualifications, the politics, the economics, the things that make California unique. So how will you help us find those candidates? And so I'd like to hear about that.
Well, we
Well, I
just
can see-
recently completed a search for Culver City,
Yeah.
so which we can speak to that. But we become very familiarized. First of all, we know what the California expectations, the State Department of Education expectations are for superintendent certification. And so we look and we screen for those identifiers. But at the same time, we are also collecting lots of information about local context, regional context, and Bob, living in that area, is, one of our local experts.
And I can say that with the Culver City search, I don't have that data in front of me here, but ultimately when we got the number to the not only just the applicant pool, but then down to the candidates, we were paying very specific attention to the demographics of that district, which is what we would do with your district. And subsequently, we brought to the board a field of candidates that I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 candidates or thereabouts, that a majority of which were from California. So it connected in many ways. That did not exclude the national aspect of it, but the recruiting side of us reaching out to people in California continues to be very positive and very extensive.
Thank you.
So my question has to do with looking over your proposal, right? And I didn't really understand it, to be honest with you, in terms of the cost estimate. So it says on there that everything is a flat fee, and then it says, but, ... So the but is that it doesn't include estimated advertising, which, so I would like an estimate of what that might potentially cost, or candidate expenses for interviews. I'd like an estimate of what that might cost. And then you didn't include possible travel expenses. It's listed on there, but, and I don't want to, talk. So with the travel expenses, what is that? Obviously, if, it's whether, as you pointed out, it's a hybrid, right? And you're willing to bring 2 or 3 or 4 people here, but what is the cost of bringing 2 or 3 or 4 people here? So I understand there's a flat fee. I get that, but I'd like an estimate of the other three factors that are not included in that flat fee.
I can tell you from experience from just recent searches that the four of us, because we're the West Coast team, that districts generally choose to spend not more than like $1,500 or $2,000 extra on advertisement. Ray and Associates, like we said, we do have a large pool of applicants, but we also feel like we want to encourage you to advertise in Education Week. We want you to advertise with the Arizona Latino and Black school administrators. There are lots of other options to expand our diversity. And that's totally driven by you. But there are some things that are covered by Ray and Associates as far as the advertising. But if you choose to expand it further, that's where those extra costs would come in. As far as having us come to you, I can give you an example as to what we just did recently in Madison. They chose to manage their costs a little bit by just having one of us come to be in person many times, and then the other two of us were via Zoom or the webcast that they used. So that cut down on expenses as well. So really the reason that it's, I think, kind of a gray area is because it's really all driven by you. The more you do virtually, the less travel we'll have. The more you want us there face to face, that would change what it looks like, but it's driven by you completely.
And I know in Culver City, our candidates they were local candidates. They came from the Los Angeles area. And so there was really no expenses associated with candidates coming to interview in the district. But should you opt to have an out-of-state candidate, the travel expenses are very dependent upon where that candidate lives, because it would be the cost of airfare and the cost of hotel. So that may or may not happen. You may have all California candidates that you seek to interview, but should you seek to interview an out-of-state candidate, then it would be dependent upon how far they lived and what the travel costs would be associated for their flight and hotel.
Thank you, Mr. Kalaki.
Yes, from what you know of our district, what do you believe will be the challenges, if any, specific to San Marino with regard to finding a successful candidate that is a good fit?
Well, I personally, speaking as a just recently retired superintendent like Dr. Chestnut, I would find your district highly desirable as a potential superintendent, predominantly because of the size, because in a smaller district such as San Marino, you have a lot of opportunity to affect positive change, to be very visible, to really know the teachers, the staff, the administrators, and to really work collaboratively, not only with the district, but with the community. So personally speaking, I would think that would be a significant draw. And plus the fact that you have such an established track record of excellence, academic excellence, and a wide array of well-rounded activities and options for students. So that is a very attractive package for a prospective superintendent, and it's a very nice sized district to walk into. Dr. Chestnut, do you have anything else you would add?
Well, I would agree with what Jan said, but I would also add that we've come through a very difficult 2-year period. I mean, every school district in the nation has, and that includes San Marino. I read with great interest your learning continuity plan, where you describe what you've done during the pandemic, how you've handled learning with students. We know that there will still be issues for the new superintendent to deal with next year when he or she arrives. And there's social emotional issues for our students. There's issues with staff. There's really some healing that needs to take place, some recovery. We need a candidate that's sensitive to that. Obviously, candidates have been experiencing that in their current districts, and I think we need somebody that knows how to handle that issue well.
And I'd also just like to add to the fact that in looking at your LCAP and your LCFF, it is very obvious in those action steps and the way you're looking at the resources that are that are coming to the district as well as your own resources, that you have been very, very keen experts in making those resources work on behalf of all learners. It is not easy. I think all of us can say to you, when you have a diverse population of ethnic populations as well as languages, those services get ratcheted up in terms of opportunities. And because you so care about each student in your district and the inclusive side of the district, a superintendent looking at San Marino, and I'll have to be honest with you, when I was working at LA County office, I looked at the San Marino for the strategies and for the support that were going on for kids as models. So, and that continues to this day for your district.
Thank you. Mr. Chang?
How many superintendent search have you conduct at the Southern California for last 2 years?
I know.
You say, go ahead.
Well, we conducted and completed Culver City. Most recently, we did Palos Verdes, Peninsula Unified School District, Poway Unified School District, San Ysidro School District. And then there's probably, another 15 or so within the last few years beyond that.
Okay.
Mrs. John?
Thank you. In your RFQ response, you wrote that you provide a matrix to assess the top candidates. I'm not looking for you to divulge your secrets, but can you speak a little bit more to what that entails and what that means?
I think our expert on that is Barb. So Barb, please.
It's a tool to drive your conversation. It helps us facilitate your conversation, and it's a data point. And so what we have you do is you do a comparison. It's kind of a forced choice and you do it independently prior to any board discussion, because we don't want anyone influenced by anyone else's feelings. So you do that independently. It's ranked, and then we bring it back to you, and it's a data point for further discussion. But in addition to that, we also use the qualities and characteristics. We have you look at those. We also have you rate their responses in the interview. So we create several data points, but the matrix, what we call the matrix, is kind of the launching ramp for conversation.
Mrs. Ryan?
Nothing at this time.
All right. Can you, what do you think is a market for the type of individuals that we're looking for here in California? I mean, how's it going? How does it look like out there? And I don't mean in Arizona, but I mean in California.
I know in Culver City, we had about, also I think of another very attractive district. And we had about 60 applications, completed applications for that school district. So it was rather positive.
No, I guess I'm asking, how many openings do you think? Are there a lot of openings in California? Are there, I guess, I apologize for not asking my question correctly.
Very good. There are a lot of openings throughout the United States, and I don't think California is any different than any other state. There's, a lot of us like Steve and I that are baby boomers. I hope I'm not insulting you, Steve. But we were at a retirement age, and there's a lot of folks that fall in that category. And I also think the onset of the pandemic also has created a larger pool of retirements than we may have seen in other years. So I do think probably California has probably several openings, and it's the same in Arizona and the same throughout the West in all the states that we have worked in.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Kolaki?
Yes. What tools will you use, and what methods will you use to gather input from the community and various stakeholders in the community?
So there's a couple of pieces, we do have a 31, we call it a 31 quality survey, which are the 31 sort of most highly sought after standards for superintendents. And we identify with you who are those, who do you want those surveys to go to? Some districts want it to go, just open it up to everybody in their community, and others specifically want feedback from within their community. So parents, staff, administrators, teachers, from within the community. You define who you want that data collect from. So we leave that survey open for a period of time within the established timeline that we have designed with you. And then we bring back that survey data. It's aggregated by the subgroups and by the questions. And we do a presentation to the board showing you what the trends and patterns were amongst all of those subgroups that were identified in that survey. We also conduct focus groups, and those focus groups are again with the stakeholder groups that you define. I know in Culver City, I did a focus group with students. I did a focus group when we all do, we divide and conquer in this area. I did a focus group with community leaders. So I met with the mayor and the chief of police and several business and community leaders. And we have a series of the same questions that we go through during those focus group sessions, and we collect, again, qualitative data from those, asking them questions about what are they seeking in the next superintendent? What questions would they like you to consider to ask of the superintendent during the interview process? So we collect a series of data points for you. Again, we aggregate all of that information, bring it back to you, and present that data that we have collected during those focus groups. And again, you define and decide what groups you want us to meet with, but typically it's teachers, staff, students, administrators, sometimes district leaders, parents, community members, if you would like to reach out, or you can even define what the community members are. It might be your parent-teacher group organization. It might be other groups within your community that are important for you to get feedback from. The rest of the team have other thoughts?
One of the other things that some districts like to do is they like to do a community forum, and that can be rolled out in several different ways. We have extensive experience at this point at doing them online, as far as either having folks come together online or having pre-recorded questions and that are open for viewing by the folks that you would send the link to. It could be your parents, your community, your clergy, your community leadership, whoever you choose, your business owners. And then they're given an opportunity to give feedback, which is then synthesized and presented to you as well before your finalists interview. We've also had community forums where they've come in on a rotating basis, and the candidates have gone into different rooms with different constituency groups where they can ask questions. That's generally in partnership with the district as far as facilitating that. But it's throughout the process but again, it's also driven by you. If you would just like them involved at the beginning, if you want them involved throughout, we're here to support you in what your decisions are.
And typically those community forums, we serve as a moderator. Just recently we did in December, a community forum where they had 3 different groups that met with each of the candidates, and there were 3 finalist candidates. And as Barb said, the candidates rotated from group to group. And then the district facilitated just, on the phone app that they could then give the board direct feedback about from that app, which candidate they would is the most closely aligned candidate for the superintendent position. So that was, again, another data point for the district. And they recorded each one of those sessions and live streamed each one of those sessions so that the larger community could also watch from afar if they did not want to come in person. So there's a lot of creative ways to do the community forum.
Along those lines too, even from the get-go, the quality survey that goes out to the community to start this process can be conducted in as many languages as you deem necessary. And so we want to make sure that that ability to expand the reach out to your community is there, as well as when We do meet with focus groups or constituency groups, how that all plays out and your degree of how you wish to have that represented. We have the ability to also provide language support in those sessions as well too for you.
Thank you. Mr. Chang? Mrs. John? Yeah. Mrs. Ryan? I don't have any questions. Mr. Clackey? All right, I think we're done. And thank you very, very, very much for taking the time. I know you guys are in Arizona and we really appreciate it.
Happy.
Thank you so much. I know you're here in Cathedral City, so you're
Yeah.
right. But thank you very, very much. We appreciate the time and the effort. Thank you.
Well, and thank you also very much. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, folks, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Oh, yes. So I think we're going to take a 3 to 5 minute break so we can refresh.
Thank you.
Yes.
Point, please, board, if you can't hear me because of the mask, because I sound like Vader, just let me know, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so now we have McPherson and Jacobson, and I believe Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Welcome to our meeting. Thank you so much for agreeing to present to us. So I will let you, take the laboring oar. Now, the one thing I would like to say is, in the interest of fairness, we have told all of the search firms that they have 20 minutes to do the presentation. In terms of the board questions, that's an unlimited time period, but if it's all right, we're going to limit you to 20. And I think when you and I spoke, you said, 15 would be sufficient. So I'm hoping 20 will be good.
If I can't present in 20 minutes, then I'm not listening to what you said, right?
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
thank you. So, board, thank you very much for your time today. I know that this process is obviously the most important thing. You've heard that probably from every firm. This is the most important things that boards do, right? Is the hiring of your superintendent. And I'll give you a brief background on myself. I was a board member in Alvord Unified for 21 years. McPherson actually on our searches uses a board member typically and somebody that was a superintendent. Not that one is better or worse than the other, but it does provide a different perspective and a different lens as you go through this process. The first thing I like to say, this is your search. We are not a firm that we don't work for superintendents. We work for boards. And that is partly reason why California school boards chose McPherson. So if you know kind of the RFP process, the process you're going through now, California school boards do the exact same thing. All the firms that are firms that you would probably see in this kind of process apply for this process. McPherson was awarded for a couple of reasons. And the most important is about really aligning to your needs, your goal, and your vision. And in fact, Vernon Billy, the CEO of CSBA, said hiring the right executive firm to serve as superintendent is critical for any district. And the partnership with McPherson provides that and a new effective resource for boards. So as you think about all the resources you have as a board that you use California school boards for, we are one of those resources. So that's who you are. That's your mission. And as I think about your mission and your vision, that's kind of what hopefully we'll use to kind of drive your search process, in addition to setting up criteria for your next leader. Give you a background on our search team. Even though our corporate office is based in the Midwest, we are California consultants. All the consultants that would work on your process are based in California. So as mentioned, I live, depending on the freeway, in this marketplace. I actually did Hacienda La Puente's search process as well. We have a diverse team, which I think is critical because as our student population is diverse, our communities are diverse, and diversity in every way that means as far as what type of searches we've done as consultants, male, female, and really a complete diverse backgrounds from our team. What's critical is as you look at all the challenges that you're facing as board members, you want a superintendent that's going to hit the ground running and also be here for enough time to have the proper impact on your district. And so when you look at our retention rates, 80% of the consultants that are, superintendents that are put in place are still in place at 5 years, at 10 years, 55%, and at 15 years, 41%. And in fact, we are so confident of our process. We wait a lot of it on the front end, that if you, for any reason, your superintendent leaves within 2 years, we come back and do the search for your district for free. So it's no surprise. This is all about our #1 customer, and that's the students that you have in this district. And we believe, just like you do, that every student is entitled to a high quality education, so every child can really realize their own potential. Your district has done an outstanding job in that area, but those 2,997 students that you work for every day is why you're all here. So I think I touched on this already. So this is what everyone wants to know. How much is the search process going to cover? The search, as we looked at it, is 19,500. That includes all phases. It's a do not exceed. So that's all expenses, advertising, videos, really the complete process. In addition, because we are a CSBA firm, we will match any offer from a competitive firm. So let me kind of walk through the phases briefly from a high level. Phase one is really, as I mentioned, the place where we start to talk about what's specific and unique for your district. So the criteria is important from the board, what the board's vision is. But as we go through our process, we'll also be getting information from your stakeholders. So we'll establish a timeline. We'll look and see from when you want to bring your new leader on, and we'll work our way backwards to really kind of making sure we are aggressive with our search, and you're really actually starting this at a good time, because a lot of districts probably won't start till March. So in my opinion, you're going to get out ahead of other districts. My gut is we could have your search process done by the time you come back from spring break, if we're really assertive. But we'll talk about the timeline. We'll talk about what kind of stakeholder, what kind of process you want to have at first. Do you want to include a community panel? Do you not? What stakeholder groups are you going to want to have in your process? And then we start recruiting candidates once we're hired. We do not wait for applications to come in. That's not doing a search. You could do that yourself, right? The objective is to look at the criteria, the specific needs of your community, and make sure we find the right person that's a match. I think the other piece that's important is we do not move candidates from district to district. You may hear that there's like kind of a cohort of people that kind of get moved around. That doesn't serve you well, and it doesn't serve the other districts well. We really want to make sure that when you find that right person, because of and I'll go through this in a second, but when you go through your process, at the very beginning, you're going to get candidates that don't align to your values and your mission, may not even have the right kind of background that you want. But once we kind of clear through that process, and we get to what we call a short list of candidates, the candidates that kind of align to your criteria and to your goals, then it really truly is about fit. And so before we show anybody to you, we spend a lot of time talking to people. We do all those kind of background checks before you see any candidate. So phase two is our stakeholder input meetings, and by the district size and some of the things that I've looked on your website, my guess is you probably have 8 to 10 stakeholder groups. And those are very specific groups that you would identify. But for example, each bargaining unit could be a group, your foundation, PTA may be a group, and then the board would tell us who are the other specific groups that you would want to identify that we would have individual meetings with. And the reason why we have those individual meetings is because each one of those groups have a different voice. We take all that information, we compile on a report that we give to the board. We suggest the board makes that document public, but it really focuses on 4 key areas. What do these groups like about the community? What do these groups like about the district? What are the challenges, obstacles, need to know information that person should consider before coming to the district? And the last piece are what are characteristics, attributes that those individual groups want in their next leader. So you'll get a document that'll have all that filed out. We also, in addition to having in-person meetings, we also have it available online because some people do not have the time to meet, even if they're virtual meetings, and we can do those meetings in person or virtually, whatever the board decides. The board will get a document. We will provide an executive summary of that, and then we share that document with the candidates as well. So the candidates have a full knowledge of what's happening in the district. Phase 3 is, I alluded to it a minute ago, is about reference checks and background checks. We do all that before we even bring you one person. The last thing we want you to do is bring you a candidate and there's no prizes. That's the last thing I think as a board member I wanted. I think I probably have to say the same for you. There shouldn't be any surprises in this process. And then we'll talk about in phase 4, what candidates do you want to interview? I suggest the boards typically enter between 3 and 5 candidates. So it should be a very difficult process for the board to say which one of the candidates from our short list you want to see, because if we've listened and done our work up front, then you're going to hopefully see 8 to 10 really quality candidates. I put the comment in there about candidates meet with stakeholders, because if the board chooses to do a community panel, I'll explain that briefly, that's a board choice. But a community panel is usually a small group of people between 8 to 10 that interview the candidates on specific questions that the board identifies, but they do not rank the candidates. So that process is another step that gives the board information about what this panel saw in the candidates. And it also helps us because we're part of that process to see if there's any disconnect between what they tell the board and what we saw with the community panel. Again, that's an option for the board. What I failed to mention before we get to our, when we review the candidates in our short list, you'll have packets of each candidate, their resume, their background information. But we also have them do a short video. We believe it's important that, especially in today's world, there could be a camera put in front of your leader at any time, and how to be effective on camera is important too. Plus, it gets you to see a different side of that candidate beside what's on paper. And that's all part of the process. That happens when I said our short list before the process when you determined who do you want to interview. And then you select your next leader. And then within 30 to 60 days, I like doing it around a 60-day period, we come back and we help the board and your superintendent set goals and objectives, and really focusing on what you find as a priority. We take information that came from your community, and we ask the board and the new superintendent to develop those goals and objectives for the next year. I said a lot. Any questions so far?
No, we'll wait until the very end so you can finish your 20-minute presentation.
So I covered that, all these pieces for you. So I want to talk a little bit about the interview process. So there are, and it's just when you look here at phase 4, coordinating the interview process, there are a wide variety of things the board can pick to do during your interview process. So for example, some boards will choose to do a writing scenario. Some boards will also want to include a presentation, like if some event happened in your community, how would that person handle it? We also recommend if we're not dealing with a spike again, that we'll set up meals with the board members, 2 board members and 1 candidate. So if you're interviewing, let's say you're interviewing 2 candidates, 2 board members would go at candidate A, 2 board members would go to a meal with candidate B, like say breakfast, and then lunch they would switch. So you're not asking that person questions about the interview process. You're just getting to know that person, because as we talked about, when you get down to this piece, it really is about fit in your process. And then we also can do a writing sample, because the communication piece, as most of you know, and especially when we're dealing with unprecedented times, how they write and communicate with the public is important as well. And then, as I mentioned, we do come back at that period and do a goal setting session with your leader. I'm going to stop here. I think I'll just say this too. We really recognize that this is a difficult process, a challenge process. We respect everybody during this process. So we do also try to maintain confidentiality. So there are times where we'll not provide all the information to some of your stakeholders, but really making sure that we treat every candidate fair and equitably. And I'll stop talking now and open up for questions.
Thank you, Ben. So we will start the questioning with Mrs. Chan.
I'm sorry, I missed it. I'm not sure if I caught it. Are you a previous board member or superintendent, or?
I was a board member for 21 years.
So will there be another superintendent?
There will.
Okay, and then how is that? How does that look and how does that happen?
Well, I will talk to the board about some of the things that you're looking for in your, as far as our team, what things you think are important, and who else will be available from our group. But we have a wide variety of other people that could serve as my partner and co-lead on the process.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Ryan.
Thank you. One of the things you have in your information is sustainability and leadership. How have you managed to drill down to get the quality candidates to stay for longer periods of time?
Thank you. Great question. I think first of all is past performance is an indicator of future performance. So we'll look and see, has someone been a jumper? Have they moved around a lot? And then we'll also look at how do they perform in their previous job. We can't tell someone to stay somewhere for a long period, but if we spend a lot of time on the back end aligning those goals and those criteria to the things that the board's looking for, and those things match up well, we typically have good success. The second piece that definitely makes a difference is the goal setting session. When those goal setting sessions don't happen, usually what unfortunately happens is that you may have 5 different ideas of what that superintendent's goals and objectives are. And when that occurs, you don't have continuity, and there usually is someone leaving early or someone's being asked to leave early.
So interesting that you say that, because while you may think there may be 5 diverse expectations or goals here on the board, we also have a very active community, and there's high expectations as well in the community. So how will your candidates ensure the transition into more sustainability and leadership? Sorry, did I take 2 questions?
No.
It's a follow-up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I think it's a, so all I can speak, so I can't tell you what that person is going to do. But I do think it's being intentional about those criteria and being very specific about that criteria, and really the board coming into alignment. So without getting into a governance training exercise, the one thing that we do know that makes sustainability higher is everyone staying in their lane, right? Board members understanding their roles and aligning those roles to the superintendent's roles. And then as a governance team, building that common vision for how you move forward. And it does mean you have to hold the superintendent accountable, and your community should have high expectations because it is about the students. But I do think, well, I know that when those things are very specific and they're targeted and there's that shared vision of how to move forward, we just see good results. But it's every step of the process, right? Looking at the previous experience, looking at what they've done, looking at how long they've been in their positions, and then really building a kind of a pipeline of what are the goals and objectives that you're all aligned to help that person move forward.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So my question has to do with, in terms of the costs, we talk about, that's all inclusive, and it says 1 day of in-person stakeholder meetings. So what if we want to expand that to have 2 days worth, meaning like 1 day of stakeholder meetings and then the other.
You've got me
day,
on record. If you need 2 days, if you need 3 days, that price includes it all.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sorry,
All
can you
right.
repeat that answer?
I said, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I know.
No, I said, even though it says 1 day, whatever you need to make sure you get the proper kind of stakeholder process, whether it's 2 days, I even said 3 days, it's all included.
Thank you.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Mr. Kalaki?
Thank you. What is your team's track record with finding successful superintendents in communities like San Marino, and particularly our district, being a small district, heavily dependent upon local funding?
Yeah, you're partial to next. Congratulations. I think so that, again, I think whenever you're doing, no matter if it's the smallest district I ever did was 120 students with, superintendent principal district. And I've done districts this size, and I've done larger districts. I think the one common factor is we want parents as partners and our community as partners, right? You can't do this in isolation. It actually hurts your next leader and hurts the board if that process isn't done. So I really make myself available. Even though I did run for my seat 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it's been now. The process and ensuring that you include people and you're available to people is important, because especially now, I mean, you live it, but this has been really a challenging time for all of our leaders, where some communities, 50% of the people love you and 49% of the people hate you, and 1% depends on the day of the week, right? So it's even more that we're intentional about our process. And we have to recognize that that's why we have so many ways where parents and community can be involved. In the old days, 3 years ago, we'd have like an auditorium where you'd have people come to the meeting and you'd have 20 people show up, even if you had this thing. So we do that, but we still do it because somebody wants to be there in person. We have the individual group and we do the online group. And then I give my phone number out to everybody because I think it's that important. Did I answer all your pieces?
Yeah, that was helpful, but I'm also wondering, as far as the length of tenure, what's your?
Sorry, that was
what's
your
statistics?
big piece. I would say that I've been doing searches for 7 years now. And I have not had any board ask any one of the leaders that have left. One person took a position because of something else that happened with a family member. But we've had good tenure with all the searches I've done. And we want that, right? That the average tenure is 2.3 years across the country. We're far exceeding that. And we do want to be able to come back to you and say to you 10 years from now, did you like your last leader and were they good for you? And hopefully you'll invite us back, but not within 2 or 3 years. I can't give you a percentage right now because I don't know that off the top of my head, but it's higher than the 80%. Mine personally is probably closer to 90%.
Thank you.
Mr. Chang?
So what is a relationship between your search firm and the CSBA? Look like how lucky, you are the only search firm with the CSBA logo. Is that they exclusively endorse your search firm or what?
So those are two great questions. So we went through an RFP process with CSBA, just like the other firms did. So, and this is our second time we were just renewed again last year. So they had a vetting process. I would say the reason why was, I think the transparency was the big reason why. The piece that we do include community, we're intentional about the community. Other firms will, I'm not knocking any firm, but we really try to talk to boards about including your community is another piece of information, right? It provides you the ability to say to your community, you really truly did hear us. And we've heard in other groups, and I'm sure you've heard it as board members, you do a project and you invite whatever group to kind of have input, but you don't use that input. We use the input and we publish it. We tell the board to publish it and to make it visible and have conversation around it. It doesn't mean, and that's why when we do if boards use a community panel, I'm very specific that the panel is not ranking candidates, right? They're only giving input, but as much information as a board can have to make this decision, the better start your new leader has. I'm answering your question in a long roundabout way. And that's, I think, the big piece why CSBA chose McPherson. And we've always had a diverse group of people. I mentioned we're a nationwide search firm, even though right now we have 12 consultants in California. We have about 85 nationwide that are really kind of just know their business. And so it doesn't mean that you're going to pick someone from out of state, but it doesn't mean, I always tell boards when you're doing a search process, think about a funnel, right? You're a reverse funnel. Bring as many candidates in that kind of meet your criteria, and down here exclude them. But see a wide span of people that can bring different ideas and different things to your district. And I think that's another piece to the fact that we're nationwide. And a third piece that I'm confidence too is that we don't work for superintendents. And that's a big distinction, right? We don't move superintendents around from district to district and have a cohort of one particular area. We are very mindful of when we do a search and we come up with criteria, we send it out to every single search consultant that we have in our network. So 85 roughly, a little bit higher sometimes, but 85 I'm thinking of right now that really kind of are responsive to that. And we help each other, because if I do a search, there could be somebody that made it as a finalist, didn't get picked, but is a wild candidate. And I call one of my colleagues and go, you got to see this guy, and at least let the board see this person. So I think that's the pieces why we were picked. And the guarantee is unique. The fact that if for any reason within 2 years, that person leaves your district, even at year 1, 364 days, they leave, we come back and do the search for you for free. So those are, I think, the main reasons why CSBA picked us.
So how often CSBA will certify your company? I mean, is that how to do a reassessment from your search result?
Well, we have to go back and be certified every 2 years. And they take input from boards and we go through a process of, are boards happy? Do they like what they're doing? We're not perfect. We're not going to make everybody happy, but I would say that when you look at especially some of the larger districts we've done and some of the challenge districts done, we've done some great work with the boards, and they invite us to come back to do other things. Did I answer your question effectively? Okay, thank you.
Mrs. John?
I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to your active recruitment strategies to ensure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing is I would say it's important that when we do any process, we try to set aside time to do just that process. So like if we're doing criteria, I would say let's not do it at the end of a regular board meeting, right? Because we're all exhausted as board members after a long session. So setting aside time to really be, again, each step is important. So the first step is the criteria. And we go through an exercise where the board tells us what criteria they want for your candidate. And then once that happens, we start looking for candidates, right? Like a lot of times when we do these processes, these interviews, sometimes the board at the end of that meeting will say, we want to do the criteria session now. So we'll spend a couple hours, usually like an hour and a half to 2 hours doing a criteria session. And when I get home, or depending on the time, I'm like thinking about who can I start thinking about? Who can I start recruiting? The next big piece is the community. We'll go through I say this I'll just say it. When we go to that third question of what are the things that next leaders should know about the community or the district before making a decision to come there, that's a big piece, because there are some challenges. Let me say this, there are challenges in every district, no matter where you go, there's going to be challenges and things that are unique to that district, and spending the time to make sure that some people interview well, some people put together a great CV, right? They look good on paper, but it's talking to people. So when we do background reference checks and we talk to them about, someone will give me a packet and they'll say, call this person, call that person. Well, we call those people because that's who we've been given. But we don't just talk to people they tell us to talk to, because people don't usually tell you to talk to people that are going to say things that aren't always so great about them. So we go 3 deep. So if they give us one person at the end of that conversation with that person, we will ask that person, who else can talk to this person's character, background, job performance, those kind of issues. And then the next person, we ask the same thing. And because we have a pretty large network, I would say of all the search firms, the largest that are in California that are doing searches, we know other people as well. And so we work for boards. And so asking those questions, that not saying somebody isn't a great candidate, but may not be a great candidate for you. And understanding how to spend the time, as I said, on the front end. So when you get your list of candidates, and when we do that short list interview process, we've heard strengths and opportunities in all those candidates. To me, that's the biggest piece, because I've seen in other districts when they haven't done that, and the time and effort wasn't spent to really spend that, because that's a lot of time, right? Talking to people about other people takes time, but it's probably one of the most important pieces that we do, because we want to make sure that you get that right fit and that person's sustainable. I haven't had a situation where a board has used a guarantee, because we really spend a lot of time making sure it's right. After we do all that background check, and you want me to go further into the background? Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Ryan?
None at this time.
All right. We're talking about your team, right? So it would be you, and can you just kind of, give us a little more detail about who would be part of your team?
So I would pick another superintendent. There's two people that I'm thinking of. I don't want to have someone that's got too much else going on. I want to keep, so I have to check and see what somebody else's schedule is like. Our home office team does the lion's share of the work. The only thing we pretty much need from, and Jennifer's amazing, by the way, really great representation of your organization. She truly is. Would be, who are the people, like who are the stakeholder groups in helping us communicate those kind of things, is where we would use hopefully her help to do that, because we wouldn't have that information. But we really, our home office staff does the majority of the work, puts the packages together, sends those to the board. And then the other thing would be, we would spend time talking about how you want to communicate with me. Do you want everybody to receive, like those kind of things are important, because every board has different needs. And some boards are like, no, just give it to the president, we're done. But so we would spend time talking about what the board wants and how they want that search to look, and how they want the communication to look.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Kalaki?
Nothing right now. Thank you.
Mr. Chang?
Mhm.
All right, Mrs. Chung? Nothing. Okay, I think we're done. So thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
very much for
taking
your
the
time.
time
Oh, you're welcome.
to
Thank you.
come here to our district. We really appreciate the
Welcome.
presentation. We really do. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
And whether you pick us or somebody else, good luck on your process. Thank you
Oh,
very much.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer? No, I think, Mr. Johnson, we're going to have you go out that way. Yeah, it's a pathway. Ready for the next? Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Good evening.
Okay.
Hello, very good. And I believe you have copies of our handout. I brought some, but I think I'll just hold on to them. Are we going to
You
do this?
can press right to proceed, advance.
Very good. So let me, I may be blocking the screen, but if you've got the copies.
We have
then-
two,
Oh,
we
you've
have
got the
two
screen up there
screens, so
too.
I think we're,
Great. Well, it's so nice to be here.
oh, thank you so much, and thank you for coming and presenting. We really appreciate it. And so in the interest of fairness, we have limited the presentation time to 20 minutes for each of the search firms.
And
In
that'll be
terms of the
fine.
questions afterwards, it'll be unlimited from the board.
That's great.
So thank you, and please begin. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm Joel Shapiro, and this is Jan Britz from the Casca Group. And we're delighted to be able to meet with you this evening and tell you why we think we would be the perfect group to conduct your search. The Casca Group, whoops. The Casca Group, as you can see, we also go by TCG. And we like to say TCG stands for Trust, Commitment, and Guidance. And those are very important to us. Trust in particular has to do with confidentiality. When we conduct searches, confidentiality is going to be so important to the board, your entire district staff, and particularly to the candidates. Commitment, we like to tell you, and this is very important, if you bring us on board to do the search, we are totally committed to San Marino. We will not be working on any other searches at the time we're working for San Marino. Jan and I would do only one district, yours. And I know that's not true for every firm. Guidance, we provide all the guidance, but we are aware that the decisions regarding candidates and the decisions regarding steps in the process are yours. We guide the board, but we're very aware that you make the decisions. Well, we'd be delighted to work in San Marino. It's a wonderful district with an outstanding reputation for so many years, at the top or right near the top in terms of academic achievement in the state. Very well known for the tremendous involvement and cooperation of your parents and community, including financial support and the dedicated staff that you have, many of whom have been here for many, many years. It's got an outstanding reputation, and we would be delighted to work with you. A little bit about us. My background puts me right next door. I was the superintendent in South Pasadena before I retired. And then when I retired in 2014, I became a partner in the Casca Group. I'm currently the president of the Casca Group. And prior to that, I was in Burbank and Glendale. I was an educator for 42 years prior to retiring, a principal at both elementary and secondary levels, worked in various positions in central office, loved being the superintendent in South Pasadena. I live in Sierra Madre, so I know this area particularly well, and I know San Marino very well. Known many people who've been citizens here as well as staff members here. I'm going to ask Dr. Britz to talk a little bit about herself.
Okay. Good evening. I'm just kind of outline. I need first to know which one I'm doing. Thank you. Okay. I was in education for 40 years, taught all the way from elementary through college. I don't see where that, I'm so sorry. And I also retired in 2015, a year later, from Burbank Unified School District. I was superintendent there and assistant superintendent. I also was in charge of human resource in South Pasadena. I had 3 principalships. 2 of the 3 I brought for excelling schools in the state of California for California Distinguished Schools and Blue Ribbon. I've worked at the college level. And I also are currently, I actually worked 4 months already this year, coaching administrators and filling in for administrative jobs. So once education is your passion, you just don't give that up. Yep.
Oh, and I will add that since I retired as superintendent, not only have I been a partner with the Casca Group, but I've done a great deal of educational consulting, coaching superintendents, coaching other district administrators and principals throughout Southern California. So what about the Casca Group makes us special? Many things. The very first thing I'd like to point out is our longevity of people that we have placed. We have a little bit more than 95% of the superintendents that we have placed who have remained in their positions for 5 or more years, which is very unusual in California. Now, obviously, there are a couple of reasons for that. Now, the most important one is you help the district select the right person, who's the best match and who's committed to staying there. But there's another reason as well, and that is, unlike some firms, we will never recruit somebody that we place for another position. So if we work with you and we place the superintendent here, we will never recruit that person to go to a larger district or go to another district. We believe in the longevity is very important. We're also selective in the districts we choose to work with. We do not apply for every search that's out there. We apply for the districts that we think we could serve best. And in the last several years in particular, we have specialized in smaller districts because there's a special culture in smaller districts. So most of the searches we've done in the last several years have been in smaller districts. We tailor our search to fit your needs. We focus on your criteria. The board, with input from your stakeholders, will tell us what you're looking for in a superintendent, and that is the kind of person we will go after. We also believe in full disclosure. We communicate with the board all through the process frequently. Sometimes you even say, are they talking to us again? They're communicating with us all the time. But we know it's important to you to know what's going on in every step of the process. Something else that sets us apart is our open candidate pool. We do not work with a stable of candidates. And I will tell you that some firms do. They have a group of people that they're continually trying to place from district to district. We don't do that. We have a number of very qualified people we've worked with, but when we open a search, we specifically recruit people that fit the profile of the district and what you are looking for. So we don't bring the same people forward necessarily because we brought them to another district. Another thing that sets us apart is the full disclosure of all applicant materials to the board. When we've received all the applications and we have assessed them and we have done our reference checks and talked to candidates, we will recommend to you who we think are the most qualified, that we think are worthy of being interviewed. But you will see everybody's full paperwork and you will determine who you want to interview. And you're going to talk about our phases of the search. So why don't you come on?
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to start out. Before I start out with the phase one of the search, I just want to say that the board drives the search. And although if you look at our phases, they're very common with a lot of other search firms, but we feel the details that we include in it are the most important ones that really make a difference. So I'm not going to go through every bullet on each of the phase. I'm just going to highlight some things that might not be in there. You know, we start with the board, and from the board, we ask you to give us some information about your district. You know, what's going well in San Marino? What are your challenges? And what kind of leadership skills would you like to see in the superintendent? But then we go out to the stakeholders. And one of the things that we have gotten really positive feedback is when we ask those same questions to the stakeholders, we actually either chart it out, or if we're doing a Zoom meeting, we put it on the screen so they can see what we write. And we write exactly what they say, word for word. And we let the stakeholders know that we put that all in a report and the board gets to see that. So we don't hide any kind of maybe some hidden things in there. So you get to see it right from the stakeholders. The important thing of writing those word for word is at the end, when you select your superintendent, they've established trust in your decision right from the beginning. You want to hear what they have to say, and they know that you've seen everything they said. So when you announce that superintendent, there's a great amount of trust with the board. Also, we've had some really big success by doing Zoom meetings, but we also can do them in person. That really would be whatever the board would like us to do. We do that as many meetings of stakeholders as you wish. We don't limit it all to a number. And in addition to that, after we get the stakeholder input and you read the report, you get to adjust what you see would be the best thing for those 3 questions. And that becomes the beginning of our brochure, our advertising brochure. Okay. And then on phase 2, one of the things that we feel that we get even with some of the small districts, sometimes the board will say, you know, how many candidates do you think we will have? And they kind of guess a number. We've always really, for all the ones that I've done, I know for Joe too, it's over and above. We get a really good number of candidates for the positions that we post. Even some of our reputation shows too, that we really work with good districts and we work with finding a superintendent that meets the needs of the district. We maintain all the files and the records. And so whatever they give us for the applications, you get to see that. We don't leave anything out that. So sometimes you may get a list like this of all of them because some of them really put in a really fat packet, but you get to see that. Phase 3, as we start the initial reference checks, our initial reference checks throughout the process are not just with the references that they give us. We have a really big network with the COSCA group. We put this out with our partners, they're a part of it, and they will contact people sometimes for us and let us know with people they know in that district, what kind of things they will say. And as we do those references on our chart that we give you, you get to see that information. We have 29 partners in the COSCA group, so we have a lot of people working with us. You get all of the candidate files, even if we see a candidate that would not be appropriate for any reason to be a superintendent in San Marino or anywhere else, we're going to share that with you. It's not like we're going to pull that application and say, that's not right for your district. You get to see it. And we will explain why. So we tell you everything we know about these candidates. And what else did I want to say? I guess that's it. So then once we get to the interview selection, you've seen all that information, and we also have a meeting where we can really talk about that and have some dialogue. So you have a feeling before you meet the people that you want to interview, some things that you would want to ask them. We go into phase 4, and because by that time we've learned a lot about your district, we actually will create some interview questions that's designed, custom designed for San Marino. And then some of you will have some questions of your own. And so we go through and say, how many questions do we want to ask? How long? We put those questions in, and then we do all the paperwork as well. After the first interview, again, we assess where we are. We help to bring the board to a consensus of who is going to go to a second interview. We will help you do that. And then we do all of the calling with the contact people. The district doesn't have to be concerned about that. We do all the paperwork, all of that. So we try to make it as easy as possible, not just on the board members, but also on your staff as well. And then 5, when it gets time to appoint the superintendent, again, we notify all of the candidates if they're coming to the last interview or if they haven't been selected. We do all of that communication. We will help with negotiations on the contract. Sometimes we can be the middle persons to make that as smooth as possible and help you in any way we can there. And then when you get to the final announcements, again, you will see that you'll have some stakeholders there that attended our meeting, and they're going to feel really good about the selection that you made. We help with your announcing the new superintendent. We can write something up for your website, for the local paper. And also if you want a written introduction for the board meeting where you appoint the superintendent, we help you with that as well. After the search is over and you've selected that right superintendent, okay, we can also help you with this new superintendent on the post search as far as performance objectives. Because by working with you all this time, we know some needs and some qualities that you want, some things to address. We can help with that. We conduct a leadership alignment and governance workshop. We just finished doing that with one of the districts. It was a very successful experience. And we help you with that at a time that's convenient for all of you. And that's a really good bonding workshop, Because even though you understand many of the things that you have as your responsibility of a board, as well as the new superintendent, excuse me, just having that time to work on those policies and procedures is so successful, and it really is a good foundation for your leadership team with the board and the new superintendent. And then we provide 2 years of superintendent mentoring at no cost. And we keep in touch with that superintendent to make sure that they can be as successful as possible in your district. Okay.
Just to touch on something that Jen already mentioned, but just from personal experience, we talked about reference checking. We probably go so deep in reference checking that I'm amazed when I've talked to some other people. A particular candidate that we're looking at, we may be talking to 9 or 10 people in doing reference checks. And we don't just talk to the people that they list. Those are the easy ones typically. We will dig very deep to find people that have worked with this candidate. And it's been interesting how many times when you go a little deeper on reference checking, you really get to some things that make a big difference in whether or not we can recommend a candidate. So that becomes very critical. Besides doing all the normal checks on social media and things like that, we also work with an agency that helps us do background checks to find out if there's anything in the candidate's background that could be an issue for you. Okay, let's go to the next slide, a proposed timeline. And this is a proposed timeline, but it's up to the board. When we get the search and we meet with you at our very first meeting, we will finalize the timeline. But you could see that if we were to begin as early as, let's say, next week, that we would be able to begin the recruitment process by mid-March and take us through about 5 or 6 weeks of recruitment. We like to give ourselves enough time to do that. And then the candidate selection and interview would be done by the 13th of May, and we'd be able to appoint the superintendent by the end of May. And that can be modified based on your needs. We can make it move up a little faster, but this would give us an adequate amount of time to cover all the different phases. So what is it that we want you to really remember about the Casca Group? First of all, we are cost effective. Our fee is all inclusive. When you agree to hire us, there are no additional charges for anything. All of our expenses for the consultants, we cover unlimited consultant time, unlimited number of meetings with your stakeholders, and we have the support of all of our partners. Again, as I mentioned before, we will do your search and no other district. We give you a 2-year guarantee, which means if within 2 years, your superintendent leaves for any reason, either the superintendent's desire or your desire, we would repeat the search for free. And this rarely happens, but if during the search, we don't end up selecting the candidate that you are satisfied with to be your superintendent, we would conduct the search again at no cost. And I want to emphasize again that we will never recruit a superintendent that we place in your district to go somewhere else. We've got the all-inclusive fee that I've mentioned. And something that becomes important is we help you with a compensation study. We look at districts of a similar size, similar area and demographics, and we give you an idea what compensation looks like for superintendents so that you have an idea when you're working on a contract, what would be appropriate. And we do help, as Jan mentioned, with the employment contract negotiations, if you'd like us to. Many districts ask us to do a lot of that. Some rely more on their attorneys, but we're willing to help as much as you like with that. Our guarantees, you are involved in every decision, the full disclosure on all applicants. You determine who gets to be interviewed with our guidance, but it's your decision. You make the final choice. And again, we have the free repeat search if it's necessary, and a free repeat search within 2 years if necessary. We are here to serve you, and we're very proud of the testimonials we receive from all the districts we've worked with on how satisfied they've been with the level of service we provide. Not only the board, but the stakeholders that we work with, because they feel that they've been heard and that their input has really made a difference. So we will conclude by just saying that we recognize that this is the most important decision you're ever going to make as a board, selecting your superintendent. We are committed to finding the best candidate to suit San Marino's needs, and we'd be honored to serve you. And we're ready for some questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you so much. We'll start the questions with Mrs. Ryan.
Thank you, Mrs. Jack. Thank you so much for your presentation. When you're talking about the letters TCG, trust, commitment, and guidance, can you delve a little deeper into that and help us to understand how that applies in our particular unique community?
Well, the trust of not only the board, which is critical because you're the ones who are going to make this decision, but the trust of your school staff, your district staff, and your stakeholders, your parents and community members in the process is critical. They need to know that things have been transparent. They knew what was going to occur when. They knew the timeline. They knew the criteria that you were looking for. All of that becomes public. So there's trust in the community. And as I mentioned earlier, the confidentiality of the process, so that when it's time to select candidates, those applicants, they remain confidential. Because I've seen situations in other districts where if that confidentiality is broken, candidates actually withdraw from the process because they feel that they can't trust the process. So that trust applies to the candidates knowing that, as well as the board and as well as community members. The commitment, I think we've been very clear that we're totally committed to one district. We will have other partners that will be involved with other searches, but Dr. Britz and I would only be working committed to San Marino. And the guidance part, we want you to know that although we do this hard work, we are guiding you through the process. You are making the final decisions. And that's very, very important.
Thank you.
So my question has to do with what is the market like for the type of individual that we're looking for? Are there a lot of openings for superintendents? Are there a lot of candidates? You know, is it a tight market? You know, how competitive is it?
Well, I think you're probably aware that there have been a number of openings because this is a very unusual and difficult time in education. And you probably paid as much attention to that as anybody. And there have been different superintendents choosing to retire a little bit earlier than they normally would because the pandemic has made things very difficult. But districts can be so different. And many of the districts where superintendents have retired are so different from San Marino. And when you ask, what's the market like for a district like yours? To be honest, there aren't many districts like San Marino. The unique qualities of the small district, the incredible commitment to student academic excellence, the incredible commitment of your community to supporting the schools makes San Marino a little bit different. And we know that we would be able to find candidates that are looking for a district like San Marino. And those people are out there. There's some outstanding people who are both current superintendents who would love to work in San Marino, and people who are aspiring superintendents who would be a good fit as well.
And I think because of the great reputation that San Marino has, I think we're gonna have candidates that will want to stay here for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not just, you know, going up the ladder. It's like, I want a stable district, a community, you know, oriented district as well. So I think you will find some candidates like that as we go through the search process.
And I think that's important. You're looking for somebody to make a commitment. You're not looking for somebody to come and say, in 2 years, I want to look for a larger district or something. You want somebody committed to being here. And that becomes very important when we talk to candidates and look at them. Do they have a history of being very stable in their employment? Can we trust that they would make a long-term commitment? That becomes critical. You don't want to turn over. You've dealt with some of that.
Thank you. Mr. Kalaki?
Thank you. What is the geographic area that most of your searches with districts that you're working with?
We
maybe
have,
75%?
we focus on California. We're a California-based search,
The whole state.
based firm. We have done searches from the very southernmost to the very northernmost part of California. Jan and I, because we're both superintendents in this area, are particularly familiar with people in the Southern California area, but we also know people all throughout the state that we have worked with, and we have partners located throughout the state that we work with. So I would not restrict the candidates that we're looking at necessarily to just Southern California. But we have a very robust network of people that we know, particularly through Southern California.
Can I just quick follow up on that? With regard to the network that you work with, are there specific universities that you tend to work with?
Well, we have connections at a number of universities. We have connections at USC, where Jan got her doctorate, and we have connections through people that in our firm through UCLA, and we have connections with some private institutions such as Pepperdine and others going up north because of the background of many of our search partners and the people we have worked with. So yeah, a few of the Cal State. So we have a number, not only our own personal connections, but when you hire us, you're hiring our whole firm. We involve our partners to help recruit candidates that they can recommend from throughout the state.
Thank you. Mr. Chang?
So no matter how good San Marino Unified School District is, but because we are the smaller school district, so compensation may not be attractive, competitive. So you think the candidate pool will be like the first time superintendent, or we may get some seasoned superintendent candidate?
I think you're going to find that there are people who want to be in San Marino, and the compensation is not going to be the key thing that drives them. There'll be some candidates who will be looking to be first-time superintendents and are highly qualified, but there are also people, and I've known even from the history here, who have come from other districts who would find that they're ready to come to San Marino and the compensation is not going to be a problem for them. You're not trying to compete with the districts that can offer so much more money, the very large ones. You're in a different situation. But I think the benefits of coming to San Marino for the right candidates are going to compensate for the fact that you won't necessarily pay what some very large districts would pay.
Yeah, I think
To that, we both did a search in Mammoth, and we both just finished a search in Taft. Okay, very different communities than San Marino, and they have some things in both of those communities that you would think, how many people really want to live in Mammoth, or how many people want to live in Taft? And working with the board members of both school districts, they were very surprised with the number of applicants we had and the quality of applicants that we had. I mean, it was really quite impressive, and they were very, both of them felt very receptive.
Well, and the reputation of this district is going to drive a lot of candidates to be interested. I mean, this is a district that's well known throughout the state. So it's not a matter of how many candidates, it's the quality of candidates. It's finding the right ones, because I have no doubt we would have a lot of interested candidates. But it's really finding the highest quality, which we know we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chan.
You mentioned in your presentation that you are selective in who you choose to apply to RFPs for. What made you choose to apply for this one?
Well, for one thing, we have a familiarity with this area. As I say, our background, my living locally in Sierra Madre, having been the superintendent in South Pasadena, know many people from this area. I feel a comfort level that I understand this community. And Jan, having been in Burbank and also knowing the San Gabriel Valley. So if there's an area that we feel we really understand and know, that's an attraction right there. And with some of our other partners, they have similar feeling where they feel a connection to an area where they can really know the needs of that community very well.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Wright?
Nothing at this time.
All right. What is the average tenure of a superintendent in California, and how does that compare with the tenure of the superintendents that you have?
Well, I think it's maybe even gone down since the last time I was looking at the research, but at one point it was between 2 and 3 years. And it may even be less now.
It is lower.
I think it's been changing rapidly, so that
18 months, and I think it's like 20.
it may be close to 2 years as the average tenure, because this has been a difficult time. But we want to point out that our average rate of superintendents 5 or more years is 95%. And I was looking at the background of many people we placed who've been in their positions 10, 12, 15 years. So finding the right person who's willing to make a long-term commitment is a key. Assuming that do a good job and the board wants them to stay, we want people who are committed to being in that position. And we're very proud of that longevity rate that we have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kalaki?
Yeah, thank you. Based on what you know of our community and our district, what do you believe are the pluses and the minuses, the benefits and the challenges that we will face in finding the best candidate?
Well, I think the challenges that many districts are facing now are financial, especially districts that are looking at any kind of decreased enrollment. There's always challenges on what we have in terms of our own infrastructure and what we're able to maintain in terms of staffing. So that's a challenge here, I believe, and as it is in a lot of different places. And in a smaller district, it can be even a bit more of a challenge, just being able to maintain the staffing so that a superintendent would be able to come in and feel comfortable that they can get the job done. The advantages I see, really the two major advantages in San Marino, I think, is you're working with a population of students who historically have performed well. And it's not a matter of trying to take schools from very low performing to high performing. It's taking students who have historically done well to the next level and maintaining that and being able to keep up that record of excellence. The other advantage is, and I experienced this fortunately in South Pasadena, is the opportunity to work with a community that wants to be involved and wants to help as much as the community here has helped. I think that's a tremendous advantage because particularly being able to provide financial support through parcel tax and through foundation and other means, you just don't find that in a lot of districts. So that becomes a positive. At the same time, community involvement is not 100% positive. We all know that. Sometimes community involvement can have the other piece, but the right superintendent can handle that beautifully.
And I think most candidates that apply to a smaller district, they want that community interaction. You know, they know that, and they know they have to dedicate some time and some resources, you know, to get the community, keep the community involved.
And you don't want a superintendent who's going to come into the office and stay in the office. You want a superintendent who's going to be out there, involved, visible. The community, the parents in the community know that person. That person goes to events and activities. In a district of this size, you can't have somebody who's just in the office. They have to be out there and involved. And that's the kind of person that I believe you'll be looking for.
So I saw you put South Pasadena Unified School District on your client list. Did you recruit the current superintendent or?
The current superintendent was the person who followed me when I retired. So I was not involved in that search because I was retired, but I know him very well. But that's the person, Dr. Jans in South Pasadena, who took over from me when I retired.
So,
our firm,
when did you do the search for South Pasadena?
Our firm did. I did not. I personally did not because I was working there, but our firm.
Yeah, I know, but your company did it,
Yeah,
right?
we did twice in 2009 and again in 2014.
2009 and 2014.
Yeah.
Okay.
2009 and then again in 2014, South Pasadena. And in fact, the board was so impressed with the Casca Group, who had placed me when I was superintendent, then it was time when I was retiring, they did not interview other companies. They simply said, we want to use the Casca Group again.
Thank you.
Because they were that impressed.
Thank you. Mrs. Sean?
No further question.
All right, Mrs. Ryan? Mr. Kalaki?
I have nothing, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and giving the presentation and taking the time to do so. We really appreciate it.
You're
Thank
very
you so
welcome.
much.
And I'm going to tell you, you will not find two people that you enjoy working with as much as the two of us.
Thank you.
That's another guarantee we can make.
Thank you.
That when we're done, you'll be sorry to see us go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Jennifer?
She's not here.
I think,
Oh,
it's all right.
Joel?
Okay. Are they?
Jennifer's out there.
Oh, okay. If it's all right, may I take a 5-minute break before we begin our discussion action item section? Thank you very much. Dr. Choi, if we could. All right, we are back after having taken a break. So we are now at item number 4A, Superintendent Search Firm Approval. It's an action item. The board will engage in discussion and take action to hire a search firm. So would we like to have a discussion in terms of, the different search firms and what your thoughts were with respect to each of them? Would that be all right with everyone? Okay. All right, Mr. Kalaki, may we start with you?
We just sort of having a general discussion about.
Yes. Mhm,
Okay.
mhm. Yes.
I do like that McPherson and Jacobson is fairly closely connected with CSBA, especially since we've done the Masters in Governance training with them. It seems like many of the things that we learned in that Masters in Governance training, what I would anticipate would be closely aligned with the values that they would be looking for in candidates as well. Leadership Associates, I was impressed. I was impressed with all of them. But they are all very different. It seemed as though the Costco group, although they are local, and it appeared to me as though they were smaller. I had a question as to how broad of a net will be cast for the candidates with that group. With Ray and Associates, although although most of that group appeared as though they were from out of state, they had worked with the Culver City district. I'm just looking back through my notes.
Of course.
I did like that some of them did specifically say that we would receive information on every single candidate and not just get a couple at the end. I think that that's important. So, I mean, I'd be interested to hear what everybody else has to say as well.
Of course. Mr. Chang?
First of all, I've been here for a long time, so I have an experience with leadership associate. I think the 3 times, yeah. I think that if you review their client list, so look like the leadership associate and the Coast Guard group, they probably did more local school district. So my interpretation means they probably know more than other group about the San Marino culture. But my person and Jefferson, they endorsed by CSBA. So I believe that they also have some credibility. Secondly, through my personal experience with the last couple superintendent we hired, so I feel if each group they offer some guarantee and also mentorship, probably also that's valuable. So with that, look like the Coast Guard group they did And also, I'm not sure the leadership associated that they provide a mentorship or before last time they did, but this time
I thought they talked about that executive leadership series that they have, and they had a whole series, I think.
For leadership associates?
Yeah,
I think it might have been extra though. Is that one of the ones?
I thought that was part of it. Maybe not.
so anyway, I mean, if we hire the new superintendent for first time superintendent, I think that's the valuable offer, yeah, from the search firm company, yeah. Okay, that's my comment.
Mrs. Shaw?
Leadership associate says they will provide it as desired. So I think that means they'll charge whatever we would want and work that out. But I share a lot of the sentiments Mr. Chang and Mr. Kalaki made. They all had very similar processes in terms of ensuring that there was a lot of stakeholder input and really focusing on the process of making sure that we're getting what we want and what we think we want and trying to ensure that process. The success of tenure and retention and placement, I thought was interesting because I don't know, it's hard for me to gauge how applicable that number will be because it's changing so quickly. But to that one, I thought that Costco's emphasis on longevity was really, I think stood out for me. In addition, I think I think one of the things they said was when you work with your community and everything is transparent, the community then trusts your decision that you make. And I thought that was a very insightful perspective given our community. That if they felt that they really are involved in that process, they will be more likely to really feel that the process led to the correct outcome, or appropriate outcome. I'm concerned, some of my concerns that were brought up were the 1-year guarantee from leadership associates, whereas everybody else had 2 years. With Ray and Associates, I am concerned that they're not here geographically available. Not necessarily because it would mean they wouldn't do a good job, but COVID itself has been so unpredictable. And I am concerned that if anything happens, it would limit our capacity to only doing things virtually. And I feel that having that ability to be able to do things in person with such a significant choice would be important. So I love that Ray and Associates has such a broad reach, but that for me was concerning. I think Mac and Jake as well. I like that CSB already vetted them for us. It gives them a lot of legitimacy for the work they do, but I am concerned that we don't know who the other team members will be without knowing the other team members. Not that Mr. Johnson wouldn't put together a great team, but I'm feeling just a little bit uncomfortable with committing without knowing who the other members are. I think cost-wise, Costco is much lower, but I think in the end, I don't know. I don't know that that really makes a big difference for me, honestly. I think there's a $10,000 range somewhat between the top and the low end. I'm not sure how much we're supposed to say about the cost because I know some of it came up and some of it didn't. So that's all I'll say for myself. I did like the idea, and I hope that we incorporate this regardless of what group we go with, was I felt that Ray and Associates really focused a lot on a data-driven decision. And I think that regardless of who we go with, I want to make sure that that really stays at the forefront of our mind, that in addition to ensuring the process itself is comprehensive, that we really do go with the data that's provided through all of the work that's done. Otherwise, sort of seems like, what's the point? That's it for now.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I just ask one clarification because of a point that Ms. Chan brought up? With the price, did McPherson and Jacobson, did I hear them correct that they would price match any other firm?
Yes, I think
Okay,
so.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Mrs. Ryan?
Thank you, Mrs. Jack. I had very similar takes from my fellow board members. But if I had to kind of get down to the nitty gritty of it all, I like CSBA and the training they've provided us in the last year and a half. However, I have that same similar concern regarding the access to the superintendents. I know that if you have superintendents in your group, if you've been a superintendent, you meet regularly, weekly with all the other superintendents, so you become very familiar with each other's district as well as challenges and strengths, and you're able to kind of work with a large group that you're very familiar with. And there's some added advantage to knowing who your candidates are and having the span of maybe a decade of knowing each other as superintendents. That's an advantage. I really like the CASA group because they spoke to me as a small community, recognizing our challenges, understanding who we are. I think if we ask the question, do you understand, do you know the strengths and weaknesses of our community? Do you know the challenges? They answered that question, I felt, the best because they're really closely aligned with us. But that's not the only reason why we choose a firm. And that is because I feel that casting a larger net, there are some advantages to that, but we've, those of us that have been on the board for a while understand that getting someone from New York or Chicago may not necessarily be a benefit to us because they're not as familiar with California ed code and law. The move is greater. The coming out here for interviews is more of a challenge. And then in the end, they may still not move, even though they may be the best candidate. So I don't think that's a disadvantage for the CASA group because they really kind of know this area. And as well, they were good about saying, we will go out and reach and get the people that you want. So if you want somebody from Northern California, you want someone from another state, they were able to do that. Same reservations about the Ray and Associates. It is challenging to travel out here with all of the COVID restrictions. When you're asking a group to fly out here or you're asking candidates from Arizona. So that is a concern because as we open up or we surge forward, we know that COVID's going to be here. COVID-19 is going to be here in 2022 and then into the future. So it is a consideration in terms of how they will be able to be successful at connecting with our community, because some people do really well on Zoom and others don't. Some people prefer to meet the group that we hire and do face-to-face, go to an auditorium, speak, have coffee, do the whole dinner thing, whatever they're proposing. So that is a concern, but they do have, I would imagine they advertised and said that they have the largest cast in terms of a net gathering perspective superintendents. Leadership, I'm hearing what Mr. Chang is saying, who we've used a number of times. And while we have returned to them a couple of times, and so we were probably moderately successful with them, I also have the concern regarding the price, the various things. And if they are giving us the full phase and the full connection to the services, that's great. Except as the situation changes, I'm wondering if it is viable to go back if we've not been as successful in the past with some of the, paths that we've chosen. So that's my take. Thank you, Mrs. Jack.
Okay, all right, and I'm going to go in the order in which, we interviewed them. So I thought all 4 of them did a great job, right? And honestly, there's not that much of a difference with any of them, I think, right? I think they understand the timeline. I think they understand community engagement, stakeholder engagement. I think they understand, board input and what we're looking for. With leadership and associates, what I liked about them was, we know the team and we know even their administrative assistants. And if you've done this before, right, especially with the time frame that we're trying to do, there's a lot of scheduling. There's a lot of stuff that needs to go on. So we really need people that are organized. We need to know the team, and we need to know that they're available to talk to us or come to a meeting, almost at a with little notice. So, and I also like that in 2021, 67% of their finalists were women or candidates of color. So I really did like that. The thing that I wasn't so happy about was the 1 versus the 2-year guarantee. And then they said it would be 2 years, but there were a lot of preconditions. So that was a little bit of a concern for me. Hopefully we don't have to deal with that issue, but in any event. So Ray and Associates, I also like the fact that we knew the team. I thought they were very articulate. I think they did a good job. My concern is not in terms of the cost per se, because I think the cost is, there's not that much of a big difference from one end to the other. Obviously, we have to be mindful of it, but I think not enough for it to be, the decision maker as to why we choose a certain search firm. But what I was concerned about with Ray and Associates was, there's a flat fee, and yet there's all these different hidden costs. Well, they weren't hidden, but the other ones, we don't have to pay for advertising. This one, they're requesting that we pay for the advertisement. They're requesting the travel expenses. And I understand that we can do a lot of this in Zoom, but to the extent that, we can engage our community and stakeholders in person, right, it would be better. So even if it was a hybrid, that means more travel expenses, not just in terms of the cost of the money, but in terms of the cost of time, logistics, and time efficiency and expediency. So that was my concern with them, although I thought they did a very good job. McPherson and Jacobson, I thought Mr. Johnson did a great job. I too am very, I like the fact that they were vetted by CSBA. I think that's, very important, and they have done a very good job, right? 80%, right, for the past 5 years. So I think that is a great statistic. What I'm worried about in this instance is not knowing the team, because you've got to know the players, you've got to know who they're going to be, you've got to know who their administrative assistants are going to be, because again, it goes so much back to scheduling and making sure that we're all on the same page in a short amount of time. The Costco group, what I liked, I guess, was that they only do one district. So that was very comforting to me. And they're 95%, longevity rate of 5 years or more. I thought that was really important. And I guess the specializing in smaller districts is really important to me because it is, I think a smaller school district like ours is very different from Culver City or a larger school district. So that was very nice. The other thing that I appreciated was that they would provide us do a compensation study for us. So it would help in that particular instance. So anyway, those are the end of our comments. So with respect to what we think of each firm. Is there more discussion that people would like to have? Mr. Kalaki?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, I think the two that I would, if I had to narrow it from 4 to 2, I think it would be Leadership Associates and McPherson and Jacobson. And if I had to pick one, I would say Leadership Associates.
Okay. I think that is actually a very nice way of doing it. So thank you, Mr. Kalaki, for being the first one out of the box. I appreciate it. And you're at the end, which is, as you know, why I'm going this way. So, but I appreciate it. I think that's a very good way of doing it. So thank you. Mr. Chang, do you have top 2 candidates out of the 4?
I think each of you already addressed for the strengths and weakness for each group. So my top 2 is a Coast Guard group and the leadership. Yeah.
Do you have an order of one or
No?
Okay.
So far, no order.
All right. Mrs. Chong?
Sorry, I'm gonna break here. I can't, I feel like I can eliminate Ray and Associates, but the other 3, I think there's so many positives and negatives, so I'm sorry. I know that's making it harder on you.
Yeah. You can't eliminate 2.
Let me find a note. There's a particular note I'm looking for.
Okay, all right, okay.
Maybe somebody remember. I guess one thing I was thinking about, and maybe you guys can help me remember. Well, actually, before that, I did have a question. For those who had done the search before, how many candidates typically came forward when these searches occurred at that very first stage? Because a lot of these groups are saying, oh, we're going to bring you 20, 30, 40, 50. And is that sort of just your typical number that typically happens?
I think it for Joseph, you've been there for
40.
Well, it depends on the time in which we go out. This is the prime time, so you'll get the most candidate. But depending on the board's desires, sometimes we opened it up and said we're considering other states. Sometimes we went more kind of locally with what we know. And oftentimes, I think there was a sense of a certain priority in terms of the qualities and characteristics of a candidate. So for instance, if you're looking for a candidate that is really familiar with our community, then you would stay more local. But if your desire is for someone who, you know, is big on finance or technology or other things, then you might be, you know, you're targeting different things. I don't think there's a set number like 20, 30, or 40. I think you just need quality of candidates. I'm not necessarily, because you can have 65, but that doesn't do anything for you. You need to just you know, focus on what our desired, you know.
So when they say, you know, we'll bring you 30, 40, 50, it's kind of like, well, that's kind of not really relevant necessarily, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, and if I could say, you know, there was one search where I think we had 50 even, or even 60, but if you went through it, there were applicants, but only really 10 were even qualified. I mean, there were, there were like principals, right? Or assistant principals who had never been in a district administration. So they're applying for the job, but they've had no prior experience at all in district administration. So it didn't matter whether we had 50 or 60. It really is not the number. It's really the quality of the candidates we get. And also, I think in COVID times, I don't know, we're going to see what we get.
Right.
Yeah, the quality candidate actually is the most important because through experience, some, the last minute they withdraw, yeah, or they say they cannot make it, yeah, or they trying to take our bid and then match to others. So end up they are not ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the question I can't remember in my notes. So I was thinking about something you were saying in terms of all of the work that goes into this, in coordinating all of that. And did Costco come with sort of like we have our support and we're gonna?
I believe we're the only project that they're doing. So,
Okay.
so they have the two of them, and I believe they called it the home office or something, or whatever. Did they call it that? I don't know. Sorry.
I know.
It's
That's
not
what
a
I
Batman, that
couldn't-
thing, but.
Okay, because I am concerned that I don't want any of this to become burdensome on any of our board or staff members. And so I just couldn't remember in the course of everything. So given all of that, I think I also agree with Mr. Chang regarding the follow-up post-search capacities, and I think leadership associates. So I guess I'll knock leadership associates out for that reason, that they aren't going to be providing some of that follow-up support, which everybody agreed was important. And yet, I think not including it with leadership associates, I'm a little bit concerned about that. So I guess my two choices then would be Costco and Mac and Jake.
Okay. The only thing is, I thought she kept referring to the executive leadership development services, continuing current and relevant professional development through, right?
They've got a
And
slide.
it's part of the
that talks about
cost.
So that is part of.
Yeah, it's part of their thing. See, it says continuing current. It has nothing to do with, it's not an additional cost.
But that's what they're saying, that's what they do. Sorry. Let me go back here. Gonna go on to Shelley Willable.
Sure. Mrs. Chang? Oh, Mrs. Ryan? Sorry, Joseph. Mrs. Ryan?
The Costco group.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Ooh.
Was there a top two or just Costa
Costco.
group?
Just that group.
Okay. For me, it would be, it would depend on what the leadership and associates, if they provide the mentoring, which I do think is very important. I thought that's what they said us.
Well,
I think they do.
they can, but I think it's an additional. I don't know that it's included in. That was the only thing.
Sorry, that will depend on what.
So it's phase 9, F in the initial letter they sent, page 5. We provide and review with the new superintendent and board community input available. We are available to provide additional follow-up services as desired. Services could include developing a transition plan, workshop, governance team to establish goals and the superintendent's evaluation process. And then, I don't know. It says leadership, so we'll provide a review board input with new superintendent and provide follow-up services as desired. So I guess I don't know the answer to that question. I guess they will do it, but I don't know if it's inclusive.
So for me, it would be Casca Group and Leadership and Associates. With the fee includes on page 8. I looked at that. Development and posting costs about
assisting the new superintendent through transition and community verification visit if conducted.
I mean, that's something we can ask if they end up being,
If we choose to go.
if we
with them,
choose
yeah.
to go with them. All right, so right now what we have is, so we have 1, 2. So this is with everybody's multiple, but so Mr. Kalaki's Leadership and Associates, number 1, McPherson and Jacobson, number 2. Mr. Chang is Casca Group and Leadership and Associates, no order. Mrs. Chan, Mrs. John, I'm so tired, I'm so sorry, Jane, is Casca Group and McPherson in no order? Or an order?
No order.
No order. And then Mrs. Ryan is Casca Group. Okay, and then for me is Casca Group and Leadership and Associates. So with that in mind, would someone?
The first choice for you? No order.
No, I have no order. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we retain leadership associates.
Okay, would someone like to second? I'll second so we can put it to a vote.
Okay.
All right. Roll call, Mr. Clackey,
Aye.
Mr. Ching,
Nay.
Ms. Chan,
Nay.
okay. Ms. Ryan,
No.
okay.
I guess I'll move
Yeah.
to, I will move to contract with Casca Group.
Would someone like to second?
I'll second that.
All right, Mr. Kalaki,
Aye.
Mr. Chang,
Aye.
Mrs. Chan,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan,
Aye.
Nam Jack, aye. School board members, may I say to each and every one of you, this has been an amazing process. And you guys have really been thoughtful and considerate, and it has really been an inclusive and wonderful discussion. So going forward, what I will do as the board president is I will call them tomorrow. We will negotiate a contract. And then I am assuming we want to move as quickly as possible. Would that be correct?
Yes. I actually had one concern about that because their timeline
Yes.
is all the way to May.
Yes,
And I know that they were willing to work with us.
Yes.
So I guess that would be something I would like for us to discuss.
sure. And that would be one of the first things, that's a proposed timeline, so we'll come and make a decision. So, all right, I thank you all, and I apologize for being tired at the end. And we will all see each other again next Tuesday at our regularly scheduled board meeting. And thank you very much.
Thank you, President Jack.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
process.
Oh, I'm sorry. Meeting adjourned.